across the board. And so as usual, we're waiting for all of them to get moving. And once YouTube gets started, we'll get rolling. And it looks like we're there. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, we've represented thousands of people facing criminal charges, and we've helped them through the justice system. We've helped them basically, get their lives back on track. Most of the people that we represent are very good people. They had one bad night, one bad argument, one too many to drink, but they're not bad people. And unfortunately, when they're sort of navigating through the justice system on their own, they can get taken advantage of. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen people we represent attempts to try to take advantage of them. And so my point is that over the course of all of these years in practice, we've seen a lot of problems, a lot of misconduct, all across the board, ranging from the police to the prosecutors to the judges and even to the politicians, which we're going to be spending some time talking about today. But what we decided to do is start this show called Watching the Watchers, which is exactly what we're doing. We're keeping track of what our elected officials, what our prosecutors, what our judges, and what our police are doing in the justice system, because what we have found is just too often we have seen a lot of these people escape liability. They'll get in trouble, or they'll do something wrong that will come to the public's attention, and they will escape any criminal culpability for it. Because there is, oftentimes there's two different tiers of justice. There's one for the people in power, and then there's one for you and I. So what we want to make sure that we're doing here is holding them accountable, shining some sunlight down on a lot of these problems, because transparency is the best disinfectant. Now, like I said, oftentimes what we're covering on this channel are police and prosecutors and judges, which we will get to today. But today we're going to start out with politicians. We are right around the corner from the election. We're literally days away. Tuesday is going to be the big one, the big day between President Trump and Joe Biden. And over the last week or so, we have seen this constant drip of sort of negative information, let's just say, as it relates to Hunter Biden, that has been leaking out, dripping out in this just consistent beating of the drum day after day after day. There's new materials. And this has been the story, in my mind, this is the story of the election that is only being covered by a very small contingent of the national media. And so we're going to spend some time on this channel talking about that. Now, the second half of the show, we are going to get back to Kyle Rittenhouse. You may remember this was the shooting that took place in Kenosha some time ago, captured national media attention. We did a lot of coverage here on this channel, some deep dive, frame-by-frame analysis of what actually took place there. And Kyle has been sitting in custody for months while his attorneys have been doing something. Well, today they had an extradition hearing, and so we have some of the information about what took place there. We have an order from the court. We've got a comparison we want to make with another case, and we want to decide, is this good for Kyle? Is this bad for Kyle? And then we've got reactions. What is his attorney going to do about it? So John Pierce actually, responded to the hearing today. And so we're going to get into all of that. So make sure you stick around. If you're not a regular of this channel, do hit the subscribe button. We have this show live every day at this time, and we're going to be covering this story up until the conclusion. Kyle Rittenhouse, I think, is one of the seminal cases of 2020 and beyond. And we want to make sure that we follow that along. We want to have you here for that. So as I said, we're going to start the show today by getting back into Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, of course, Joe Biden's son. We know that some time ago there was a sort of a hard drive that was transferred into the possession of Rudy Giuliani, which is the president's lawyer, President Trump's attorney. And Rudy Giuliani took this information to the New York Post, and the New York Post published a lot of this information, saying that Hunter Biden has some pretty unsavory deals with some of the world's international leaders and different, international corporations, in violation of certain rules. And if not in violation of rules, certainly something that was troubling, at least to look at. And so the New York Post released the story. I found it to be mostly credible at the time. We did some analysis here on this channel about that, but a lot of the other media decided it wasn't credible. Well, what ended up happening is day after day, new material came out, new emails, new people were vetting this information, and it became more and more authentic. We had Tony Bobulinski who came out, lended his credibility to the whole story, and for some ridiculous reason, Still, this story is being, in my mind, just completely censored and ignored by a huge contingency of our national news media. And that's the reason we're going to spend a little bit more time on this today, diving through it. We're going to talk specifically about the authentication of the email. So if you haven't caught our prior videos on this, we have done that. We've gone through the federal rules of evidence, specifically looking at the rule on relevant information. So what constitutes relevancy? Remember, many of the people in the media were saying that this story is irrelevant. This is not even pertinent to the campaign. Well, we looked at the relevancy rules, and I am pretty sure that basically all of this stuff is critically relevant to deciding on how you're going to be casting your vote. So as I said, the reason we're focused on this is because if Hunter Biden were just a regular citizen and doing all of these things, or if this were a Republican, if this were somebody in the Trump administration, they would certainly be held under the microscope. But because this is sort of the favored party of the media and of the Democrats, this is just simply not being covered. But we are going to cover it here today, of course. So I want to dive into it. Now, again, we sort of back up a little bit. One of the main criticisms that the media had over all of this was that they can't authenticate it, that this is not credible information, which is not why they're not going to report on it. Never mind the fact that the FBI had a subpoena that they issued for the hard drive itself. Never mind the fact that we've got some credible witnesses that go by the name of Tony Bobulinski. They've had a number of individual people reviewing this information. We know the FBI has the hard drive now, so they could have come out and done some authentication on this, but they didn't do it. The Senate Homeland Committee also have reviewed the documents. Anyways, we're going to get into all of it. Let's start at the top, though. This story came out, and a lot of people are going to be critical of the messenger here, but the Daily Caller was first to report this. They had an exclusive, and this story came out, looks like today at 10:30 this morning Eastern time. And what they're saying is that they have an exclusive here that the New York Post has a smoking gun. It says the Hunter Biden email is 100% authentic, 100% authentic, according to a forensic analysis. And we're going to spend some time getting into that. And I want to show you specifically the email, and I want to show you how they're authenticating this, but let's lay out some framework. So remember, this was a hard drive that was in a Mac store repair shop, and it was transferred over to Giuliani. So we've talked on this channel about how that can implicate or sort of interfere with the criminality portion of the case, because you have a chain of custody that you have to preserve as evidence is being transferred from one party to another. And in this case, it went to the repair store owner, then it went over to Rudy Giuliani, then it went over to who knows whom, the Daily Caller or other individuals. So this evidence may not be something that holds up in criminal court, but it is certainly relevant. And just because it may not hold up in criminal court, which I still think it would, quite frankly, but I'm just sort of, this is the devil's advocate argument. Many people are saying this wouldn't hold up in court because of a broken chain of custody and those types of issues. In my mind, that just doesn't, there are ways around that. But what we're talking about for this context is whether or not this is credible enough for public consumption. That's the issue. Not whether or not Hunter Biden was in cahoots and violating, the Foreign Agent Registration Act or any of those other things. I think those are all pertinent. But the big issue that I have with this story is that the media isn't covering it because they're saying it's not credible. Well, we've got mounds and mounds of evidence that show that it is credible and it can be authenticated, but none of them are willing to do it because we're right around the corner from an election. And I spent some time, I think it was Wednesday of this week, going through and showing you that when you go to the New York Times, when you go to NPR, when you go to any one of these big media sites and you search for Tony Bobulinski, there are 0 search results. How is that even feasible? How can this story that involves a candidate for the presidency, involves his son directly, and a credible witness by the guy by the name of Tony Bobulinski, how can it just be disappeared from these mainstream news sites? Well, that's because I think they have an agenda. Quite frankly, I think that is the answer. But what I wanted to dive into here is, so this story from the Daily Caller. The Daily Caller has what they call a news foundation. They call it the DCNF, so the Daily Caller News Foundation, and they ended up getting a full copy of the actual hard drive. So if you recall, when Rudy Giuliani first brought the hard drive out, he was not letting people access it. And it was even one of my criticisms about this. I understand that he did not want to leak this material because he didn't want to show all of his cards. He still had some cards to play, and he didn't want to detail those because it was very effective in this election. Well, my point was the stuff that had already been released, why are we not seeing that? Where is that material? And so there was a back and forth between the Daily Caller. They were trying to go and examine the original hard drive in full. They were originally denied, but now they got access to it. So they got access to the original files. Remember, up until this point in time, what we have been seeing is just, PDF printouts and screenshots of this stuff. And so one of my concerns was, well, it looked real. It looked authentic. There was a lot of corroborating information. The dates matched up. They contacted somebody who was also on the email chain, which also matched up. And that person confirmed that it was authentic. So we knew all of that. But my big concern was, why don't we have the file? Where is the actual file from Rudy Giuliani? If all this stuff is legitimate, I'm sure there's somebody with more skill than I who is a cybersecurity, a forensic, tech person. We use those types of people in our criminal cases because, I may know some of the technology, but I can't, if I'm representing somebody, I can't represent them and then go on the stand and ask myself questions, right? If I know how DKIM works or how any of this stuff works, I can't put myself on the stand and ask questions. So we need to do that with an expert witness. And I know that there are many, many people who are highly sophisticated in this field. And I'm wondering, as this story is unfolding, where are all these people? Why can't we just give them access to this so they can come out and authenticate it? And we saw that Jack Posobiec and Mark Cuban that we covered on this channel, they had this exchange. Jack Posobiec was trying to arrange this meeting for Mark Cuban to bring his own forensic people and to start analyzing this stuff. But in my mind, this has all been happening just a little bit too late. So anyways, what ended up happening is the DCNF, so the Daily Caller, I almost said Democratic National Committee, but the Daily Caller actually got access to that. So they coordinated with Rudy Giuliani and they brought their own forensic expert in by the name of Robert Graham. He's a founder of a cybersecurity firm named Arata Security. And he got an actual copy of the email to analyze the metadata, the header of the email, the DKIM, crypto cipher and all of that stuff. He was able to go through that. And so they actually looked at the email from the guy from Burisma, from Vadim Pozharsky, which was an advisor on the Burisma's board, which was the same board that Hunter Biden and Devin Archer were on. And so Hunter Biden joined earlier, and then this email that they're analyzing came from April 17th, 2015. Well, what happened? What was going on then? Obama was still the president. Donald Trump was just getting ready to start running for office. Joe Biden was the vice president. And this email implicates a meeting between Vadim from Burisma and Joe Biden. Okay, directly. It says, "Thank you for meeting with my father." I'm going to show you the email here in a minute. This is why this is so important, because this is the connection between Hunter and Joe. There's more than just this, but this one is now being confirmed, authenticated by an independent third party by the name of Robert Graham. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him also. So we now know that, a lot of this stuff about, Hunter Biden's sex tapes and images of naked selfies and all of those things. Okay, that's, that you may find that interesting. It's part of, sort of election year gossip, but it has nothing to do with the election, really. It has very little to do with, Joe Biden. But if there's an actual story that connects the two, that implicates Joe Biden in some of these nefarious dealings from Hunter Biden, that is the issue. That is the big one. And so this seems to be doing that. Trump took office in 2017, right? January 20th, 2017. The election was in November 2016. He took office 2017. This email comes from 2015. So Joe Biden is still in office. One of the other major criticisms that I've heard of this whole story is that who cares what Joe Biden and Hunter Biden did after Joe Biden left the White House? Well, in this situation, in this email, he's still in the White House. So he's no longer a private citizen. He's part of the government, and he's meeting with Burisma. He's also pressuring the Ukrainian president to fire a prosecutor. This is looking really bad, and a lot of people just simply aren't covering it. And as I've said, there's a different standard, a different tier of justice when you are on the side of those in power, when you're favored by those who can decide to bring charges or not, or to continue an investigation or not. You can escape the same liability that many other people would be put through. And remember, a lot of people in the Trump administration, Donald Trump himself, was investigated for 2 years on the Russian collusion thing with the Mueller investigation, and they did a deep dive and they came back with very little, in my opinion. But now we know the FBI has had this hard drive since 2019, and they've been sitting on it. which is, in my mind, an imbalance in justice. We want equal justice across the board. If they're going to be going insane over Trump and his family, the same sort of investigation, the same level of scrutiny should be applied across the board. And in this case, it just doesn't seem to be. I just don't see that. I don't feel it. I showed you yesterday, ground news. There's a big blank coverage that is happening on the left side of the media and even the middle side of the media. Okay, so enough of that. Let's dive into it. I want to show you the actual email that was analyzed by Robert Graham. This is what it looks like here. So you can see that it says, this is the email from 4/17/2015 at 9 a.m. I wanted to highlight that for you. And also we wanted to talk about this right here, the DKIM. It was valid. It was signed by gmail.com. I'm going to explain what that is. And we're going to talk about this guy right here, Robert Graham. Cybersecurity expert Robert Graham said this email is unquestionably authentic after analyzing its DKIM signature. And so this was the email. This is that smoking gun that the Daily Caller was talking about. It says, "Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to DC and giving an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together. It's really an honor and a pleasure. As we spoke yesterday evening, it would be great to meet somewhere for a quick coffee. What do you think? I could come to your office somewhere around noon, so on my way to the airport best." Now, we have already talked about this email. Okay, we've already covered this previously and said, okay, we put the timeline together. There was an email that went out previously to Hunter that said, hey, I got to talk to you about this issue. Burisma's being investigated. We have this prosecutor breathing down our neck. I need some help. He sends that email to Hunter. Sometime later, they set up a meeting. We have pictures from a golf outing with Devin Archer and some other people. Then we have it come back that this email was sent after the fact. So it looks like they sent an email to schedule something. Then they had the meeting. Then they had the meeting saying, thank you for meeting with me, right? So the timeline matches. And we just got a huge super chat, oh my goodness, from Christopher Conlone for $50. He says, keep up the good work. I learn a lot from watching your show. Thank you, Miss Faith, for sending that over. Very generous, Christopher. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that compliment. And thank you so much for being here. So we now know that this email is really just it's authentic, according to cybersecurity expert Robert Graham. And let's take a look at who this person is. Okay, this is somebody who my initial thought was, all right, this guy's going to get skewered. If he comes out and he says this email is authentic, everybody who is opposed to this story is now going to be just trying to skewer this guy. And so I wanted to look into him. Is this somebody who is a Trump sycophant? Is this somebody who's a Republican Party, hysteric? Or is this somebody who is more middle of the road and he's giving us a fair analysis of the evidence? And so let's take a look at who he is specifically. Robert Graham, he calls himself a cybersecurity provocateur a little bit here. This is his Twitter account, and you can see here he was the person who invented or created Black Ice, which I think was a security, it's security software, IPS, sidejacking, mask can, blog code, cyber rights, internet scanning, unethical coder, and he's a provocateur. He's got his mask on over here. That's this guy. He's got a decent following, but certainly not a blue check mark or anything like that. And I found him on email. I found him in different places. And his big statement, and I'm going to show you why he's explaining this, but he says that the email can absolutely be verified beyond a shadow of a doubt. And he says that he tested the content using the DKIM signature that I just showed you. And he did it, and I'm going to explain sort of what the breakdown looks like. But the big thing that I was originally curious about was, who is this guy? And so I went and I poked around his blog, and I found a blog post that was written 5 days ago, basically by Robert Graham, basically endorsing Joe Biden. Here it is. He says, why Biden? Principle over party. And this is not how the article starts. I just clipped this out and moved it up to the headline. But he says he's complaining about Trump a little bit. He uses an excerpt from Hillary Clinton's speech, and he's sort of detailing this issue about the transition of power. And he says, if this were Trump's only failure, then we could excuse it. And as long as he defended all the other liberal institutions, we could accept one aberration, talking about the refusal to transfer power peacefully. He says the problem is that he's attacking every institution. He's doing the best to act like a populist autocrat. This is all, disparaging Trump. This is his opinion on him. Our commitment to liberal institutions is keeping him in check, but less and less as time goes on. For example, Jeff Sessions refused to politicize the DOJ. Trump replaced him, with Barr, who corrupted the DOJ to serve Trump's political interest. I mean, this has only yet another example. A complete enumeration of his long train of abuses and usurpations would take many more pages than I intend for this blog post. So he's not happy with him. He says 4 more years of Trump means 4 more years of erosion of our liberal democratic institutions. So does that sound like somebody who's just making this analysis because he's got a political axe to grind? No, that sounds like somebody who doesn't like Donald Trump at all and wants him out of office. 4 more years to him would continue to erode our democracy, is what he says. And so that is, if this is how he's being framed, but that's just not accurate. He's being framed as somebody who is just dogpiling on Hunter Biden as part of this right-wing conspiracy, but he's not a right-winger. This is a guy who doesn't want Trump in office. And he does his analysis on the DKIM keys, which I'm going to explain how those work. First, let's take a look at what Wikipedia has to say about these things. It is instructive. It's good to know what these things are. And a DKIM is an email authentication method designed to detect forged sender addresses in emails, a technique used often in phishing and email spam. It allows the receiver to check that an email claimed to have come from a specific domain was indeed authorized by the owner of that domain. It puts on a digital signature, links it to the sending domain and to the email address. It says that the recipient system can verify this by looking up the public key with the DNS, which is the domain name service, which is sort of the DNS is what translates a web address like google.com into language that a computer can use. So it's sort of, direct interface between your IP addresses and your those numbers that you put in. It translates that into the web address. So a valid signature guarantees some parts of the email have not been modified and that the signature was affixed. Usually DKIM signatures are not visible to end users. They're fixed and verified by the infrastructure rather than the message's authors or recipients. So this is all taking place on the back end, on the servers. And then you can, as a recipient of the email, your email client can then contact the server and say, hey, does this thing match up? So before it's sent, say from your Gmail address, it's gonna have a conversation with Google. Google's gonna say, okay, we know what the contents of this message are. We're going to assign a key. That key is then gonna send, all of that's gonna be packaged up, sent, you're gonna receive it, and then your computer can break that down and say, yeah, the email is the same. The DKIM key is authenticating this email. So we know it hasn't been changed. It hasn't been modified. Very easy to spoof email addresses, not easy to spoof a DKIM key because it's server side. It's not in your client. You can't mess with it. And we go on and we explain, actually Robert Graham explains a little bit more how this works, but I wanted to stop and pause on this because up until this point in time, the only information that we have seen is information about a screenshot, right? We've got a screenshot, we've got a PDF printout, we've got some, screen grabs that are on different websites, and we haven't had anybody actually come out and confirm this. Look at the raw file. As this Wikipedia article says, the DKIM key, the headers, all of that stuff is all hidden. You don't see that in your email client because it's all computer language. It's stuff the computer's using. And so my big point was, where is all of that data? If Rudy Giuliani says this stuff is so legitimate, just give us the files. Just send us over the files. Just post the file. Don't post the screenshot. And Rudy was doing his thing where he's running around saying, oh, I think he called it pettifogging, which is a great word. I don't use it enough. But he says pettifogging, we all know it's authentic. We all know it's credible. And I think, many of us agreed with that. Many of us saw this, trove of thousands and thousands of emails. And we said, yeah, it's probably true, right? This looks like somebody's hard drive that was just, sort of living their life for the last 5-10 years. They were just accumulating all of this stuff. So why not just post it so that we can verify it? Well, Robert Graham agrees, and he actually said before he did the authentication, he was explaining that you can validate leaked emails. So if you go over to his blog at errata, I think it's blogspot.errata.com, you're going to see this blog post from him in October 14th. He says, yes, we can validate leaked emails. Here's how we do it. When emails leak, we can know whether they're authentic or forged. It's the first question we should ask of today's leak of emails of Hunter Biden. It has a definitive answer, he's saying. Today's emails have cryptographic signatures inside the metadata. Such signatures have been common for the past decade as one way of controlling spam to verify the sender is who they claim to be. These signatures verify not only the sender, but also that the contents have not been altered. In other words, it authenticates the document, who sent it, and when it was sent. All three, the document, who sent it, and when it was sent, because you can't change anything. Otherwise, the validation is not going to confirm. It's going to say this is different. The document is different than the key, and the key resides back with the server. Crypto works, he says. The only way to bypass these signatures is to hack into the servers. The only way to bypass these signatures is to hack into the server. In other words, when we see a 6-year-old message with a valid Gmail signature, we know either A, it's valid, or B, they hacked into Gmail to steal the signing key. Since B is extremely unlikely, and if they could hack Google, they could do a ton more important stuff with the information, we have to assume it's A. That was taken back on October 14th. And he went in and he analyzed the emails and he says they're authentic. Okay. And so what he did is he actually, that screenshot that I posted, if you read his blog post, but basically what he's doing is he's taking the file and he's uploading it into a different piece of software that will then verify this. So the DKIM here has been deemed valid. It's signed by Google. The original email, the original document is confirming that this person sent it. Vadim Pozarski sent it to Hunter Biden. It was signed by Gmail and it was sent on this date. So this entire document is now matching up with the Google server, which shows that it is authentic. That's what we've been asking for a long time. Now, we already suspected it. The media didn't want to run with it. Are they going to now? Now that there is hard data that shows that that email is authentic, and it's not just a random email. This is the email confirming that they had a meeting. Maybe the most important email of all the emails. We already saw the email that said, let's set a meeting. We already saw the pictures that said that looked like a meeting. And then we have a confirmation email that says, thanks for the meeting. So it's there. And that leads to just a whole barrel of monkeys that we can dive into, but it's authenticated by Robert Graham, an independent security consultant, somebody who doesn't even like or want Donald Trump to be reelected. What more can we ask for here? And is anybody going to run with this story other than the people who are already talking about it? Not holding my breath. All right, so we have some more confirmation from other people throughout the government. This is even a little bit more biased. This comes from Ron Johnson, who is a senator on the Senate Homeland Security chair. Not only a part of the committee, but he's actually the chair. And he's been investigating Hunter Biden's documents for a long while, and here he is, looks like yesterday, on Fox saying that this stuff is indeed authentic.
Well, again, it's obvious. They were peddling influence. They were trading off the Biden name. And you can also see after Joe Biden left office, Hunter starts getting panicked that he's kind of losing what he had to sell. And you can see that through a lot of these emails.
Can you confirm the laptop and Tony Bobulinski and what he said to Tucker Carlson this week?
All I can say is that all the verification, all the validation we're doing, we haven't turned up any discrepancies. Everything appears to be authentic that we've looked at so far.
Yeah, it is authentic, right? There's enough evidence there to say this stuff is authentic. You have the senator of the Homeland Security Committee saying it's authentic. You have independent security people saying it's authentic, and you have other independent third parties who were saying that they were a part of certain relationships and certain business deals and certain conversations that corroborate the original allegations. So the original allegations were surrounding Burisma. We have another situation with Tony Bobulinski from another company saying that they were doing almost the same stuff. They were doing the same thing. His email's different. His email's the whole 10% equity in trust for Joe Biden. H is going to hold 10% for the big guy. Remember that one? And so now we have just multiple people from all different areas who are saying this stuff is legitimate and authentic. This is not commentary on whether or not Joe Biden should be elected to office. It's just commentary on this. There's enough here now to have the conversation. And for the longest time, it's been this slow walk from the media saying that that's just smear campaign. There's nothing there. There's not enough information. The New York Post is tabloid trash. That is just not true anymore. Now, if there's ever a time that this story is documented and legitimate, this is it. and the media should be covering it, but I do not expect them to do that. Speaking of Tony Bobulinski, he was around. This came from today from James Rosen TV. James Rosen is part of Sinclair Broadcasting Group, which is a growing broadcasting company, very big on a lot of different platforms throughout the country. James Rosen posted this on Twitter. He says, Tony Bobulinski tells them that he's been questioned by 6 FBI agents with counsel present for 5 hours on October 23rd, 7 days ago, listing him as a material witness in an ongoing investigation focused on Hunter Biden and his associates. His cell phones were examined. Here it is.
You list me as a material witness within the
Where
entire
is the audio on that?
FBI on their computer systems, and it was
All right, well, we don't have any audio, but you understand what he just said there. This is Tony Bobulinski saying that he's a material witness. Let me switch over and explain here. He met with them. He said that the FBI agents examined the 3 cell phones that Bobulinski turned in. So the FBI now has 3 additional cell phones, and they said they'd be asking for more. So Faye said that you can hear the audio. I don't know why I couldn't hear it. Let's see. All right, well, I'll figure that out. Faith just said that she can hear it. I apologize. It's the problem must be on my end. Okay, so let me continue to go on. Let's try this other video here, and let's see if this one plays. Here is more breaking video from Tony Bobulinski, who says that the team of FBI agents questioned him intensely, not just on Hunter Biden's work in China, but also on his tenure with the board of Burisma. Let's try this one.
At the heart of Tony Bobulinski's allegations about the Biden family is an email from May 2017, reportedly sent to Bobulinski and Hunter Biden, in which their business partners suggested 10% of the $10 million in Chinese capital their startup had raised would be held by H, apparently Hunter Biden, for, quote, the big guy, whom Bobulinski
that's the 10 held
on the thread understood
by H for the big guy.
Vice President Joe Biden.
That wasn't an isolated email.
And
there were 5 other emails. 3
we
of
have
them
another credible
Hunter
person who's
Biden
being
was
confirmed by the
responding and asking for more money. He didn't make any mention of, oh wait, my dad's not getting 10%, or don't talk about that, or hey Jim,
or there is no big guy, or what have you.
Yeah, not a claim, not a single reference.
The Democratic nominee has disclaimed any knowledge of his son's work.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
Sinclair.
All right, so James Rosen finishes this up. He says that the Justice Department official confirms that in 2019, the FBI opened up a criminal investigation into Hunter Biden and his associates, focused on the allegations of money laundering, and that it remains open and more active today. Very more soon. We are Sinclair Station. So, this stuff is really heating up. Now, the FBI is now confirming that they're involved in it, and it sounds like more stuff is going to be dripping out over the coming days. Because the election is literally on Tuesday, my thought was, maybe we're probably done with this. There's probably not much more that's going to come out, but it sounds like there is more that's going to come out. So a lot of people are confirming this, and there is a criminal investigation that's ongoing, and it involves Hunter Biden, and there's a lot of smoke that this may also implicate Joe Biden specifically, as based on the authenticated emails. We have another email from John Roberts. So many people are saying that Tony Bobulinski is not credible. This is somebody who has he also has a political axe to grind. That's where really these different critiques come in, right? The information is authentic, or the messenger is the problem. The people who are, actually brought the stuff are fabricating all of this. Well, we have an email from John Roberts over at Fox News again. Fox News is one of few who's talking about it. This email came out this morning from Khanna, who is, I'm going to tell you about him in a minute, to Tony Bobulinski. The redactions are mine. So John Roberts posted this. Khanna is this fellow right here. He's a Democrat for Congress. He's running for the 17th district out of California in the heart of Silicon Valley. And his priorities include, banning PAC and lobbyist money. He wants to create technology, manufacturing jobs, debt-free college, and so on and so forth. New industries, women's rights, clean technology, apprenticeships, vocational training, all that stuff. So this guy is not a Republican. This guy is not somebody who is a Trump sycophant. This is not anybody who would be served by supporting the credibility of Tony Bobulinski, right? It's a Democrat. Tony Bobulinski is despised by Democrats right now because he is making claims against the lead Democrat, Joe Biden. Well, here is what Khanna said to Tony Bobulinski this morning. He says, literally at 4:20 a.m. today, said, Tony, hope you're doing okay. I did give on the record to the New York Times that I know you. You have always acted honorably with me, and you and your family members supported me. I've told any media outlets that have asked the same thing. I refuse to comment on the details of your allegations because I don't have any personal knowledge about that. But I have said I respect your service to our country and that you have never been a partisan hack in our interactions. You have talked about putting country over party. I also have made it clear I do not think you are a Russian agent. I will continue to make that statement to any media that asks. And then they talk about contributions. So this is the second part of, they're talking about contributions, more about contributions. He says, I'm grateful for your past support. We had a strict policy on, not accepting certain types of contributions. Thank you so much. If you want to chat, I'm happy to talk after the election on a personal level. I wish you and your family the best. That comes from Khanna, who is a Democrat running for office. And in my mind, this is just more support for the credibility of Tony Bobulinski. This guy is a Democrat. He's got no personal gain by sending this email to Tony. The reason this guy, I think, was emailed originally is because Tony in the past has made major contributions to his campaign. Tony Bobulinski himself is not a Republican. He's donated to Democrats in the past, and somebody from the news media dug up his contributions and then reached out and contacted Khanna and said, hey, what's going on with this? This guy is supporting your campaign. So he gave them a statement back in which he's explaining, Tony's a pretty stand-up guy. He's always been ethical with me. He's always been upright. He's always put country over party. This is not a partisan hack. This is not Russian disinformation either. And so we now have, more people coming out of the woodwork to support the claims, and it's feeling like there's not even much to discuss anymore. It's pretty clear that this is all legitimate. All right, so what does the Biden campaign have to say about this? Let's take a listen.
There were more accusations made this week on that most-watched Fox News interview a couple nights ago from Tucker Carlson. Did those meetings happen as they had been alleged when Joe Biden was a private citizen?
We're not going to waste any time on this smear campaign because it's just another distraction to distract, again, away from 4 years of Donald Trump.
There were more.
Not even going to talk about it. It's a smear campaign. That's it. No response to it. Hey, we now know there's some more information. It's pretty good. You want to take this opportunity to talk about it? No, it's just a smear campaign. We're not even going to waste any time on it. Well, what is a smear campaign? Here's the definition. It says it's a plan to discredit a public figure by making false or dubious accusations. False or dubious accusations. Is any of this stuff been proven false? The only statement that I've heard from Joe Biden is he said everything's false. He said that's all false. That's all lies. Well, what is he talking about? Was the email that is now authenticated and confirmed and corroborated that passes the DKIM validation from the Google servers, is that a lie? Is any reporter going to ask him about any of this stuff? The election is on Tuesday, by the way, everyone. It's on Tuesday. Sort of running out of time. If you want to know the answer to this question, we're going to need a response from the Biden campaign that just doesn't deflect around the answer, that just doesn't say it's a simple smear, because it seems like it's not false and it's seeming less and less dubious by the day, by the hour, in fact. So we're going to see if we can get anything out of them. Again, not holding my breath. I think, Twitter, Facebook, a lot of the mainstream media is just complicit in making sure that these criminal allegations are just, maybe not dismissed, maybe not just completely ignored, but definitely shoved in the corner until the election is over. They don't want to talk about it for now. We saw that Twitter today unlocked the New York Post Twitter account for a long time. It had been locked, and they were not even able to communicate on their own channel because they got blocked. Twitter went over, they had their conversation with Congress, they came back out and they said, we're going to make all these changes. Many people were saying that the changes weren't in effect. Now today, the New York Post has their stuff unlocked. It's too little, too late. All of the information is still pertinent, it's still relevant, but we're basically out of time. If they can continue to suppress this story through Tuesday, they may be successful in making sure that it is an inconsequential story, even though it's one of the most important stories, I think, of this entire election. But we will see how that continues to play out. All right. It's a good time to say, share the channel. If you like this analysis, if you think somebody would get some pertinent, thoughts out of this, would appreciate if you would send that over to them, because now it's time to change gears and jump into the next story of the day. Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse had court today. He had an extradition hearing. Here he is in court. This is Kyle. He didn't say much today. He was brought in with a shirt and tie. This was the first hearing that they actually had in person. The other hearings preceding this one were all done via Zoom, via a remote telephone and video. But today, this took place in court. So the judge actually called them in. And we wanted to spend a little time diving through this because this hearing took place in Lake County, Illinois. Lake County, Illinois was where Kyle basically left. So remember, this all took place in Kenosha. He left. He went back to Illinois, and he was apprehended there. And he's been held in custody in Illinois, even though this all took place in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So he's been there for months, and we've been covering this for months. And for a long time, there's been very little updates. Basically, the last two court hearings were just continuances. And I was sitting here on this channel commenting, going, what are they doing over there? His attorneys didn't look particularly prepared at the last hearing. They were talking about, filing all of these requests so that they could bring a laptop in for Kyle Rittenhouse. And I'm thinking, they didn't file that like a month ago? Why is this stuff taking so long? Then they needed multiple continuances, multiple extensions so they could submit their petition for a writ of habeas corpus. And it just kept like lingering. And I'm thinking, this poor kid, he's just sitting in custody. What are they doing? Well, today we actually had the hearing. We had the extradition hearing. The writ for petition of habeas corpus was already submitted. And this was the day to have, literally this morning, the day to have arguments about what to do with Kyle. And the main issue here is whether they should basically, keep him in Illinois and say to Wisconsin, sorry guys, get bent. We're just going to leave you over there. Or is this a situation where they're going to send him back to Wisconsin so that he can actually be prosecuted? That was the issue. Extradite him or not extradite him. And the Chicago Tribune had a pretty good story today. I want to show you some highlights from it. But this came out from Lake County. It says the Lake County judge rules Kyle Rittenhouse should return to Wisconsin to face charges in Kenosha. So they're going to send him on back. And again, I clipped this out. The article doesn't start this way, but I just put this in so you can see the byline and the author and the source down here at the bottom. So in part of the article, it says extradition proceedings typically are technical matters that don't focus on the substance of the alleged crimes. But Rittenhouse's lawyers have tried to block his transfer by arguing he fired in self-defense and is the target of a political prosecution. So you see here what they're saying is typically we don't address these issues, but Rittenhouse's lawyers, for some reason, are addressing those issues, which I agree is a little bit unusual. He said in a filing before the hearing, the teen's lawyers indicated they might call his mother to testify regarding the circumstances of his arrest. That didn't happen Friday, however, and his lawyers also, they did not call expert witnesses they had indicated they might put forth. And so those witnesses had been expected to attack the investigation and the probable cause for the investigation. So it sounds to me like what these attorneys were trying to do was treat this extradition hearing like a preliminary hearing where you do challenge the probable cause, where you do these things, where you bring in expert witnesses and you bring in people to testify and you sort of attack the substance of the case. We talked about this. This was where was this? I think we talked about this during the Whitmer plot when they had a preliminary hearing and they brought in all of these expert witnesses to talk about a lot of the facts of the case, and the judge found no, there's enough probable cause here to move forward with the criminal charges. It sounds like they were trying to do a preliminary hearing or whatever their version of that was, but it's not that. It's an extradition hearing, and in extradition hearings, it's a pretty limited conversation. It's a difficult thing to win, and it sounds like they were trying to kind of do a hearing that wasn't really the nature of the hearing, and they had all these people prepared, but they didn't call anybody. And so, what actually did happen there? Well, we see here that the article goes on, and it says one of the teen's lawyers, John Pierce, announced at the start of the hearing that he would not be addressing the arguments he'd made in a previous filing that alleged extraditing Rittenhouse would violate his constitutional rights. One of those arguments turned on the contention that sending the teen to Wisconsin would violate his 14th Amendment due process rights because he would face a legion of hazards if he's put in adult jail. So once again, to me, and this is just an article, I don't see his filings, I don't see his court documents, I don't see anything that happened there. But he submitted a bunch of, here's what I think happened. And this is just me speaking off the cuff. I don't know if it's true or not. It sounds to me like he was preparing for this extradition hearing like it was a preliminary hearing. This is John Pierce. Now remember, John Pierce, Lynn Wood, we also did an analysis on those two gentlemen. And from what I was able to find, I do not see that they have a lot of experience in criminal law. Go look on their websites. Maybe they've been updated. I haven't checked them out in a while, but what I saw was they do high stakes litigation. They do a lot of media type of litigation, but a lot of it's civil law, not criminal law. So it'd be pretty easy for somebody who doesn't have experience with this stuff to think that an extradition hearing is the same as a preliminary hearing, but it's just not. And so he prepared, John Pierce prepared all of these arguments, submitted them, and then probably realized or talked to somebody who knows how these things work, who said, yeah, this is an extradition hearing. It's not a preliminary. You can't argue all of that stuff because that's not before the court. It's not an issue about probable cause. It's an issue about extradition, which is a different issue. It's a different set of rules. And so just speculating here, I have no evidence to this. It sounds like he submitted a bunch of stuff, then later learned you can't make those arguments in court. You need to focus on some of the technical things that take place. And then he goes, oh, yeah, you're right. None of those arguments are pertinent at this point in time. Therefore, I'm going to just not make those arguments. That in itself is not unusual. It's not unusual for an attorney to throw everything at the wall and then pick out which ones they want to stick. So that by itself is not unusual. But just based on what I have seen thus far with Kyle's legal team, I just don't have a lot of confidence in these two guys. I just don't. And we'll see what happens. But I'll explain a little bit more about why I am lacking in confidence. So here we go back to the article. It says, instead of making those arguments, Pierce focused entirely on a technical argument that the paperwork from Wisconsin didn't meet the standard to return the team. He based much of his statement on the contention that the documentation was insufficient because one Kenosha County prosecutor swore to the facts in the criminal complaint before another Kenosha prosecutor rather than doing it before a magistrate. He says that is game, set, match, Your Honor, which is a ridiculous thing to say in court, in my opinion, but he did. Game, set, and match, Your Honor. Okay, whatever. The point is, he's saying, a ridiculous argument, almost infuriating to me, that he's going to go into court and he's going to say, he holds up, one piece of paper that says, well, I looked at this document, and this document was sworn to another prosecutor and to not a judge. Therefore, we're not going to extradite Kyle Rittenhouse because I have this one document. It's like we see this a lot where defense attorneys will latch on to one particular thing and they'll think that is the winning argument. We see this all the time. And we see this from our clients a lot of the time. We'll see clients who come in and they'll say, I was reading the police report, and in the police report, the officer said that my car was beige. It's not beige. It's tan. Therefore, I think my case should be dismissed. And they bring in, their registration says tan, not beige. And the officer wrote beige on the ticket. So they go, well, the report doesn't match my registration. Therefore, my whole entire case should be dismissed. It doesn't work like that in criminal law. It doesn't. It'd be a lot easier if it did. But just because you find one little technicality doesn't mean that the judge is going to go, oh, okay. So you mean that this teen in my court who shot 3 people in Kenosha, who's the subject of national media attention, and who's also under extreme scrutiny from the Kenosha prosecutors in Wisconsin, just because a prosecutor had a little formula problem or they did something a little bit out of ordinary, you're right. We're just going to release Kyle and we're just going to make sure that he doesn't get extradited to Wisconsin, and we're just going to let this whole thing slide because there was a paperwork problem. Never happens. Never. Never. I've never, I think, once seen it happen. There are technicalities that you can win trials on in those types of things, but judges really try hard to cure these defects. They're not going to just abide by that. And what this looks like to me is just grasping at straws, if I can be candid about this. It looks totally like they had nothing else to do. It looks like they were just trying to delay the extradition, and they're doing it for motives that aren't in Kyle's best interests, quite frankly. I don't think that it serves him well, and I'm going to explain why here in a minute. The assistant Lake County, so John Pierce goes in and he says, look, Your Honor, we have this document that was sworn in front of the wrong person, therefore we should win this case. Game, set, match, Your Honor. Not okay. The assistant Lake County State's attorney, Stephen Scheller, who is the opposite. So John Pierce is representing Kyle. And on the other side, we have the prosecutor, who is from the Lake County State Attorney, Stephen Scheller. And they're arguing the prosecutor rejects those concerns. He says, okay, that's fine. Yeah, you have that one document that doesn't work. How about this? We have a pile of other documents accusing the teen of a crime and not calling for his extradition and calling for his extradition. Scheller noted that a Kenosha County prosecutor signed papers listing the charges before a judge, so another prosecutor did it correctly. And in addition to that, the governor, J.B. Pritzker, had signed a warrant calling for Rittenhouse's extradition, which we covered on this channel. So John Pierce went into court with a document that was largely irrelevant because we had other documents signed by the Kenosha County prosecutor himself, plus one signed by the governor, Governor J.B. Pritzker. So we have other documents that are even more powerful than the document that John Pierce was relying on that are going to ensure that the procedure was followed and that Kyle Rittenhouse should be extradited. So, this is something that I don't see a strong basis for it. I don't see that John Pierce had much of an argument. I think he saw a technicality. He needed something to say in court. He needed to come up with something. The whole nation's watching. And so he needed to go in and put on a big show. But it's not substantive. And it's not in Kyle Rittenhouse's best interest, in my mind, at all. Let's take a look at what the judge had to say about all this. This would have been good for John Pierce to have read maybe before going into court or learn a little bit more about this. So Bill AT CBS 5-8. Don't know if this is a news anchor or whomever this is, but he posted the actual order from the judge. The Lake County Circuit Court denies the defense motion, grants extradition for Kyle Rittenhouse. And I see some questions coming in. I know we have an awesome super chat from Mr. Gary Anderson. Thank you so much, Gary. Very, very generous of you. I appreciate you sending that over. I don't see a question there, Gary, but again, once again, thank you so much. I mean, extremely generous. I'm kind of blown away by this. We have some other questions coming in on the Rittenhouse matter, one from 48 Kingmaster, one from King Brandon. Looks like I am going to want to save those until the end. So we're going to keep going. Let me get through some of this content, and then I'll make sure I address those questions. But I do want to pause and say thank you, Gary Anderson, for the super chat. All right. So the Lake County Circuit Court denies the defense motion, and here is what the motion itself said. This is what John Pierce should have known. According to Illinois law, this court shall not reevaluate the probable cause determined by a Wisconsin court. So it sounds like originally John Pierce wanted to do that, right? He was preparing all of his stuff to go in and say this is a self-defense case and the arrest was unlawful and all this stuff. According to Illinois law, this court shall not determine if he had a valid self-defense argument on the Wisconsin charges. Again, according to the law, the court shall not examine any potential political impact that a Wisconsin district attorney potentially considered in charging Kyle. So the other argument from John Pierce was this is a political prosecution, and the court saying, look, according to Illinois law, we don't need to think about any of this stuff. Again, according to Illinois law, this Illinois court shall not rule on the state statute that they charge him as a 17-year-old. According to Illinois law, and it's becoming almost insulting at this point, an Illinois court cannot opine on the safety or the alleged lack thereof of Rittenhouse in the state of Wisconsin. These questions, pursuant to this case, Duran, and Illinois law are not to be addressed in an Illinois extradition proceeding because Illinois law said it. Look how sort of, it's kind of a slap a little bit. It's saying, according to Illinois law, according to Illinois law, according to Illinois law, another one, and another one, and another one. Who's that rapper? Another one. Illinois law, Illinois law, Illinois law. These matters can be raised in Kenosha County, Wisconsin through pretrial proceedings or during trial. All of those issues should be addressed in Wisconsin, which is exactly right. All of this stuff that John Pierce wanted to present today is irrelevant according to Illinois law, and the judge is reminding him that Illinois law says all of this stuff. So maybe you should have read the stupid law before you decided to come into court and bring this petition. Therefore, the court denies the petition for a writ of habeas corpus, grants the request by the Lake County State Attorney's Office to grant extradition of Kyle Rittenhouse to the state of Wisconsin. So the judge is agitated with this, in my mind. He said 5 or 6 times, according to Illinois law, you can't do that. Hey, by the way, according to Illinois law, you can't do that. And Rittenhouse's bizarre defense team wants to continue to do it. All right, so we saw that outside of the courthouse, course, there are protesters, as everybody expected. This is the scene. There was some indication that you could hear some of this stuff from within the courthouse. BLM protesters, Anthony Huber's, somebody saying over there, "Stop the war on Black America." What else do we have? Yeah, so, a decent showing. We've got some cameras, stuff to end racism. Again, Kyle didn't shoot any black people that I recall. And it, to me, was a very clear case of self-defense. I went through that analysis, hours of analysis on that video. We broke down the probable cause statement. We broke down, all the different angles. We did an audio analysis of it where we could hear the gunshots as Kyle was running through the streets. The other gunshots were going off before he fired. He was being chased by Rosenbaum. I mean, the whole thing has self-defense written all over it. I may agree with John Pierce that it feels like a political prosecution for sure. But you take that back to Wisconsin and you do it there. Meanwhile, Kyle Rittenhouse has been sitting in Illinois for several months now, and his attorneys aren't doing anything proactive. They're not doing anything substantive in this case. He's just sitting there. And they had a week showing at the extradition hearing. They filed multiple continuances up until this extradition hearing date, and he's still sitting there. We've made no forward progress on the case at all. He may have some good issues that he wants to bring up. There are good issues. I do think it's self-defense. I do think that this is a political hit job. But at the same time, he's not in the right forum. You don't have those arguments in Illinois. You transfer him back over to Wisconsin and you make your arguments there. We're going to explain why I think that's a better strategy. All right, so this is the latest from the court docket. We looked this up today. I actually pulled this up right before the show. Here's what you'll see. They have a new court date scheduled for Kyle Rittenhouse on November 6th. It's going to be a status of the extradition hearing again. He's still in the fugitive from justice status because he's not in the state that he is being charged with the crime. So he's basically got a warrant out for his arrest, and now they're just discussing extradition. So not a lot of substantive new entries on the court event docket here, but we do see that there is a new court date on November 6th at 9 a.m. in room T110. So mark your calendars if you're following along. Now, I want to explain a little bit about why I think this is not such a good strategy in a little bit more detail. I first wanted to check, what did John Pierce just say about this? What is his position on this? Because in my mind, I know what would happen next, and I'll explain what that would be, but let's see what he wants to do. So this is from John Pierce. He says, number one of three, while we have great respect for Judge Novak, we obviously and strongly disagree with today's decision. Kyle has an absolute right to appeal the denial of his habeas corpus petition. Yeah, there's no question about that. He has a right to do it. Is it the right thing to do? We're going to decide here in a minute. He says, we will be filing his notice of appeal immediately, stupid, and pursuing Kyle's righteous cause with swiftness and vigor in the Illinois Court of Appeal. We will never surrender. Kyle will be set free and cleared of all charges. He is grateful to you all and asks for your continued prayers. God bless Kyle Rittenhouse and the USA. Hashtag fight back. I'm surprised there wasn't a link to a button to go donate to Kyle's defense fund in there, because it seems like that's all they're doing in my mind. It seems like they're just continuing this thing out. They're going to appeal a case, in my opinion, that has no basis for an appeal. What is he going to appeal on? What is the basis for an appeal? You can't appeal anything just because you dislike the ruling. That's not a basis for an appeal. We see that all the time. People will not hire our firm. They'll go out, they'll represent themselves or hire some, terrible law firm. They'll lose their case and they'll come back to us and they'll say, hey, we want to appeal the case. Well, what's the basis for the appeal? And they'll say, well, we lost. I got found guilty of this and I don't want to be found guilty of it. And we'll say, yeah, I know that. But what is the basis for it? What did your attorney do that would justify an appeal? You have to have a legal error. You have to have something that's reversible. The appeals court just doesn't say, in most cases, they can grant, they can review it on their own. They can review it newly on the next level, but they need something to sink into. What can they connect the basis of the appeal to? Here, I don't know what it is. Is John Pierce just going to hold up that document again and say, no, no Court of Appeals, this is the document? All of those other documents that were signed by a magistrate with a prosecutor swearing under oath, that was also signed by the governor, those are irrelevant. We want you to reverse the judge's ruling on this one document, which is largely irrelevant. Are they going to grant an appeal on that? No, they're not. If they do, I'll come back on this show and I will, mea culpa. I'll eat my shorts and say I was wrong on that. I'm not going to be wrong on that. I'm pretty confident that this is going to go up on appeal and it's going to get smacked back down. And the only thing that's going to happen is Kyle Rittenhouse is going to be sitting in custody for even more time when he could go back to Wisconsin and we could see some progress. Here is what the court docket looks like in Wisconsin. So again, Kyle is still in Illinois and this is what it's going to look like. So nothing has changed in, nothing has changed in the Wisconsin Circuit Courts. We still see here that there's a notice of retainer. We have Attorney M. Richards, who is still on the case, and there's no new court date that is coming up. So nothing has happened on the Wisconsin side. Everything has been happening on the Illinois side. But now, we've got a court date scheduled on November 6th. We'll see what happens there shortly. But in my mind, they're going to appeal it, according to John Pierce, and he's going to continue to sit in Illinois, which is not wise, in my opinion. The reason why is because we've covered this on this channel. I want to do a quick refresher. It's because of this gal, this young woman named Chrystul Kizer. Okay, Chrystul Kizer is this young woman here, and she was charged with premeditated murder in 2018 for the death of Randall Volar. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because we're going to compare this to Kyle Rittenhouse. We're going to compare her case to Rittenhouse's case because they're pretty similar. And what was the result with Chrystul's case? Let's take a look at it. So, Chrystul Kizer, she was charged in 2018 with the killing of a man whose name was Randall Volar, and she was ultimately released from a Wisconsin jail in Kenosha, right here in Kenosha, and her bond, oh my goodness, it's $400,000. Well, wait a second. I thought that Kyle's bond was $2 million, and in Illinois, Kyle can't even get out on bond. So he has to sit in custody in Illinois. But Chrystul, when she was in Kenosha, also for murder charges, she had $1 million bond that was later reduced down to $400,000. So here's it's very simple. Kyle's in Illinois with no bond. Chrystul is out of custody in Kenosha, Wisconsin with a $400,000 bond. So no bond or a $400,000 bond. What do you think is the better option there? Miss Chrystul Kizer, she was 17, same age as Kyle. She shot Randall Volar. Kyle also shot people. She was been waiting for trial for 2 years. Her case received widespread attention, self-defense. She was a victim of sex trafficking. She's black. She met Mr. Volar when she was 17. On the night of the killing, she traveled to his home in an Uber, spent several hours there, and then shot him. She then set fire to the home and left in his vehicle. At the time of his death, Mr. Volar was under investigation for child pornography, sex trafficking. Some of the victims in the Rittenhouse case were, actually had pled guilty for similar or related charges. Ms. Kizer said that her relationship involved sexual abuse, money, and he was a grown-up. I wasn't, so I listened. She had been pinned to the floor. I didn't intentionally try to do this, she said. I was pinned to the floor shortly before shooting him. I didn't intentionally try to do that. So again, a lot of similarities. 17, also involving a gun, also murder, also shot somebody, also sort of a self-defense claim. She was pinned on the ground. Kyle Rittenhouse was literally running away from these people. And it's the same prosecutor as well. The same prosecutor is going to be on both cases. So we talked a lot about this guy, Mike Gravely. He's a Kenosha County District Attorney. He didn't dispute that she had, that Volar committed crimes against her, and so on. We don't need to read the whole article, but this is the same guy. He's involved in both cases. No trial date has been set as of June 22nd, as it probably has been set now. They offered her a plea deal to reduce the charges from first-degree intentional homicide to felony murder. So they're offering her a plea deal, which I still think is probably a little bit too light. Right? It's way too light of a plea deal. It may be something that is more akin to self-defense. But anyways, that's not the point of the story. The point that I'm showing you, why I'm showing you Chrystul Kizer, is because it's very similar. And you want to think about this like buying a home, right? I've made this analogy before. If you want to go buy a home, you look at what are called comps. You say, okay, I want to sell my house. What are the different neighborhood houses in my neighborhood selling for? I want to know what I should list mine for. Well, what did that one go for? Okay, well that one went for $400,000. And it's a little bit bigger than mine, so maybe I'll ask for $350,000 for mine. That one has a pool, I don't. That one does this, mine doesn't. And so, you compare and contrast. We're doing the same thing here. We're comparing Chrystul Kizer's case with Kyle Rittenhouse's case. Once again, Kyle is in Illinois. His attorneys are going to appeal the case, so he's going to sit in custody, and he's not going to get out unless the appeal is successful, which in my mind, it is not going to be, not even close. And so that is a bad option. We look back here, we can see what Chrystul's court docket looks like. This is her case. Some of this stuff is blanked out, but this is Chrystul Kizer's docket. See here, first-degree intentional homicide, use of a dangerous weapon, take and drive a vehicle without a consent, arson of a building, bail jumping a felony. It looks like she also, left somewhere, possession of a firearm. Also, Kyle was charged with a similar offense. So this is Chrystul's, and this is Kyle. And so these look a little bit bigger, but they're not, right? The modifier is just the use of a dangerous weapon. I don't know why those are not on Chrystul's over here, but you can see a lot of the similar charges: first-degree reckless homicide, first-degree intentional homicide. We've got use of a dangerous weapon, use of a dangerous weapon. We've got possession of a dangerous weapon under a person by the age of 18, possession of a firearm, convicted of a felony. So, she's got a little bit of a different charge. She's got arson charges. He doesn't. He's got, a couple additional homicide charges and one count of recklessly endangering somebody, but very, very similar charges. And when you look at the bond amount, so this is from Kyle's case. So if you actually go back in Wisconsin and you look up what the bond was set at on August 27th, after the arrest warrant was issued, we're going to see here, let me move myself. You're going to see here that Mary K. Wagner, the judge, set a bond of $2 million, right? $2 million. Chrystul Kizer originally, when she was first brought into court and she had her bond hearing, defendant in custody, appeared in with her attorney, initial appearance adjourned. We had a temporary $1 million cash bond set with conditions. So on her first court date, or earlier on, back in June 2018, it was set at $1 million. Then after a lot of work was done on the case, her bond was ultimately reduced almost 2 years later. Actually, just over 2 years later. So it went on June 13th from $1 million, 2 years later down to $400,000. And it was deposited 2 years later, and she got out of custody. So why would they not move Kyle back over to Wisconsin and then try to modify his bond? I think he's got a way stronger self-defense argument than Chrystul ever did. So why would they do that? Why would they just let him sit in custody in Illinois? We did a little compare and contrast talking about the comps. Let's take a look here. You can see that the charges for Kyle Rittenhouse were intentional homicide and others, intentional homicide being the big one. Same here with Chrystul. Both were age 17 at the time. Both used a gun. Currently for Kyle, there is no bond because he's in Illinois. He doesn't have a bond. They're not going to let him out. Is there a release bond? No, there is no bond. It's $1 million for Chrystul, and it was ultimately reduced to $400,000, significantly. District attorney, the same in both cases. The number of victims were 4 with Kyle. Okay, there were one was the reckless endangerment, which was the reporter. We had 2 people who were killed, and we had 1 person who was shot in the arm. Chrystul shot 1 person. The victim history: 3 of the 4 in Kyle's case had a criminal record. Chrystul's victim had a criminal history as well. Cause of death, very similar in both: gunshot wounds, gunshot wound to the head. Premeditation, the only thing that you could say about Kyle is, he traveled to Kenosha, he had a firearm, but there's no indication that he had any intention, he had any forethought of shooting anybody at that moment, at that time. The bullets were a response to being chased around by a bunch of protesters. Chrystul's is worse in my mind. There's indication of forethought. She did have a different motive. She went back to the house. She intended to do some of this stuff. Kyle was responding to being attacked. Evidence: civilian video in her case. In Kyle's case. In Chrystul's case, there were text messages indicating that she wanted to do something to this guy. And so there's more evidence, I think, in Chrystul's case than there is in Kyle's case about premeditation. No plea deal has been offered in Kyle Rittenhouse's case. Chrystul Kizer's case, they've offered to reduce it to felony murder. So if you compare and contrast those two things, if you just look at one case with the same prosecutor, with the same attorney, with a very similar charges, also 17, also, a lot of trauma, a lot of self-defense arguments, you might think that if we brought Kyle's case back over to Wisconsin and made the same or similar arguments, that you might be able to get Kyle Rittenhouse out of custody, and then the case can proceed as it would. Instead, what's going to end up happening, this is speculation, and if I'm wrong, then I'll be wrong. What I think is just going to happen is ultimately Kyle is going to get extradited anyways. I don't think he's staying in Illinois. So let's stop beating around the bush here. Rather than appealing this, rather than, spending all the time in the world in Illinois in a losing battle where this guy is just sitting in custody, let's send him back to Wisconsin, file a motion to modify his release conditions, quash the warrant, request a very low bond supported by, a number of different materials, character witnesses, evidence, and get him out of custody while the case is pending. Would be one of my preferred methodologies. Now, if I'm wrong and they appeal this thing and the appeals court comes back and says, yeah, you're done with this, let Kyle out of custody, we're not going to extradite him, he's free, then I'll come back on the show and I'll admit I was wrong, but I am not anticipating that happens. All right, let's hop on over to the chat. So as is ordinary, get those fingers warmed up on the keyboard. We got Miss Faith over there. She sent me some questions and some super chats. A lot of good questions coming in. So let me turn the chat on and we will get those rolling. Glad everybody is here. Miss Faith is right back in the room behind me, helping us keep the train on the tracks over here. All right, so let's get into the questions. All right, what is going on, everybody? All right, so we see here, King 48 Kingmaster says, so you believe Kyle Rittenhouse is innocent? I thought before you were saying, like, Kyle's case isn't looking good because he did something wrong. Now I see it's just his lawyers. So I do think Kyle Rittenhouse is innocent. I do. I will make that claim based on the probable cause statement that was submitted by the prosecutors in Kenosha, based on the video evidence that I saw, based on some new information that has come out recently about new guns getting fired and new people being investigated. I think this is a clear case of self-defense. I've read the self-defense statutes in Kenosha in Wisconsin, and we looked at all the charges. The way I was reading the probable cause statement is that basically they were writing the probable cause statement to support the claim that there was an intentional homicide. You can't even question that. People are dead. Bullets were fired. Sure, intentional homicide happened, right? Bullets left Kyle's gun and killed somebody. But they were also framing the probable cause statement just in a massive way to allow a truck called self-defense to just drive through with no issues. So I think, in my opinion, he would be more successful in Wisconsin in that environment than he would be in Illinois, where he's not going to get out of custody. He's not going to get extradited. He's basically just going to sit there while his attorneys fiddle. All right. King Brandon says, why doesn't the prosecutor drop the case? It doesn't make any sense. Why are they trying to do everything in their power to imprison an innocent person? So King Brandon, I think that goes back to a lot of the political stuff, right? It's just a political thing. I don't think that there is any question that the homicide charges are sufficient. And the thing so in other words, they can bring the charges. It's up to the defense to make the claim of self-defense. So the defense attorneys need to go in and they need to affirmatively say, yes, we know Kyle shot people, but he was doing it out of self-defense. So this is just pretty standard. The prosecutor brings the charges and the defense has to raise the argument of self-defense. The prosecutor is not going to raise the defense arguments for the defense. The defense needs to do that. The prosecutor's office, they have enough to bring criminal charges. I don't disagree with that. They can charge him with the crime because people are dead. The defense should then make the claim of self-defense, but we have not even had the opportunity to do that. Remember, none of this self-defense stuff has even had a moment in court because it's not happening in Wisconsin. If Kyle went back to Wisconsin, we could start making the self-defense arguments, and then we would see where that goes. All right, we have Never Trust a Lawyer says, R&R, is it possible for you to file as a friend of the court? It is possible. I haven't been asked to do that, and I don't want to get involved in something that I haven't been asked to be a part of, and I would have to it's something I'm pretty passionate about. If I was asked to do it by somebody, who's a part of Kyle's team, I would consider it, but I do not expect that to happen. Eric Highsmith says, if Kyle is extradited, his case will be heard earlier, and then if proven innocent, he will be let out sooner versus him staying staying in Illinois, or am I missing something? No, that's right. Yeah, he's extradited. So what's happening right now in Illinois is his case is not being heard. We call it on the merits. We're not hearing any facts of the case. We're not hearing any self-defense arguments. He's in Illinois because there's a warrant out for his arrest in Wisconsin. If Kyle's lawyers were not challenging extradition, it would have been very simple. Kyle would have just been, okay, yeah, he's got an open case in Wisconsin. Send him back to Wisconsin. Then he can make the substantive arguments. But the case didn't happen in Illinois, didn't involve Illinois victims, didn't involve Illinois law, didn't involve anything in Illinois. So the judges aren't going to consider the merits of the case. They're not going to go out and say, well, we're going to apply Wisconsin law in our Illinois courts or anything like that. All they're talking about is extradition, whether he should be extradited or not. None of the merits, none of the victim information, none of the self-defense, none of his reasoning, none of his explanation. It's not relevant. The only thing is whether to keep him in Illinois or send him back. So in my mind, strategically, it's like, let's send him back. I think it's a clear self-defense case. Let's go win on the self-defense argument, not sit here and make arguments about a bogus extradition claim and, say we're going to appeal this and he's got all these rights and all this stuff. And it's like, guys, it's not a good argument. Send him back to Wisconsin, make the self-defense claim, file the motion to modify his bond, get him out of custody so he's not rotting in a jail cell somewhere. Then you go make your self-defense claims. But they're not doing it. They're not addressing the case on the merits. They're going to appeal it, and they're just going to twiddle their thumbs for a long time in Illinois. Appeals don't happen overnight. It's a long process. This case may be on hold for months. We'll see what happens. Does a murder conviction require a unanimous vote to convict? How does that work? Can't not see any chance of, juries need to be unanimous. Good question from Carl Sillytoe. Kevin Sharp says, hey, Faith, what should Kyle do about his crazy lawyers? If they have already been paid, can he get refunded and get another lawyer? Yeah, Kevin Sharp says, yeah, you can change lawyers. You can change lawyers really at any time as long as the court will let you do that. The only time that a judge really won't let you change your attorney is like if you're in the middle of a trial or something like that, or if you're right before a trial, they're not going to allow you to do that. So he's free to change his lawyer at any time at all. All right. And let's see here. Some other questions coming in. We got a super chat from Valentino G, who says, was there any acknowledgement of the concern over Rittenhouse's safety in an adult facility in Wisconsin, despite him being a juvenile? Is there any chance that this concern will be addressed? So yeah, John Pierce did raise that argument. That was part of his position when he was basically arguing against extradition. He's saying that if Illinois sends him back to Wisconsin, then Wisconsin is going to now, put him in an adult prison and his safety is going to be detrimental. Well, the judge in Illinois says, that's irrelevant here, okay? That's not it for Illinois to decide. Illinois is not going to reach into Wisconsin and tell them how to run their courts and tell them how to process Kyle. It's not how our system works, okay? We have independent states that are autonomous, and the Supreme Court decides the debates between the two states. Illinois can't tell Wisconsin what to do and vice versa. So Illinois is saying we can't make an argument on that. If Kyle does go back to Wisconsin, then what would happen is his attorneys would file the motions with that court that does have the jurisdiction and the authority to make some changes on that issue. So they would go back in the pretrial proceedings. They would file a motion with the court. They'd say, hey, we're concerned about our client's case. Kyle Rittenhouse is 17. He's got all this stuff going on, and we think he'd be better suited if he's moved to so-and-so facility under so-and-so care. And they'd make their arguments for it, and they'd base those arguments on Wisconsin law. But they can't make those arguments in Illinois, because what is Illinois going to do about it? The only thing they can decide is whether to send him back or not. And so this claim, I don't even know what the basis of the appeal is going to be. We'll see. I'd love to see that document and see what sort of nonsense they can concoct, but we'll see. If he does go back to Wisconsin, certainly they can modify that. They can ask that his bond be reduced and he just be released on his own recognizance. And if they make a good argument, the judge might really reduce his bond. Who knows? We'll see. At least we know the jurisdiction is sympathetic. We know it is because we have evidence in Chrystul's case that she is now out of custody. $1 million reduced down to $400,000, and now she's not even in custody anymore. So we have a little bit of a framework. We have a road that we can follow out of the same court, out of Kenosha, with the same prosecutor, with very similar circumstances. So in my mind, that is the better move. All right, Bonnie Speck, what is the possible reason in his defense team delaying this other than to run up the charges and fame? So I think that's exactly right, Bonnie. I think Bonnie Speck says that I think she hit it on the head. I do not think that this is in Kyle's best interest at all. I just don't. And I think that they're probably two things. I think number one, they don't know what they're doing. That's number one. they're confused and they're just a little bit lost. And so they're just grasping at straws. They're filing motions and they're trying to really extend this thing out as long as they can. I've covered some of the other concerns about these attorneys, that they've got a lot of debt, that they've got a lot of broken partnerships, that they're, sort of in financial turmoil, both of them, Linwood and John Pierce. And there's documents that we've covered on this channel to back that up. Those are not me making claims. Those are documents that have been released on the internet indicating that they've got, broken partnerships and they're massively in debt and they've got all these judgments against them and all sorts of stuff. So that's why I have concerns about this. It feels to me like they are just milking this thing for all the publicity that they can milk out of it. And we see that with John's statements. He says, we're going to righteous cause with swiftness and vigor. And you look at Lynn Wood and he's talking about, the savior of America and all this stuff. You're like, guys, this isn't in Kyle's best interest. What are you doing? It's bizarre. We have another question from Brad S. Says, I thought the reason to keep him in Illinois was because he would be put in general pop and would be at risk. So I think that's an argument. I think that was one of John Pierce's arguments, but he's still in custody in Illinois. And if he's transferred over to Wisconsin, Chrystul Kizer was in custody for 2 years and she's doing okay. And she got her bond reduced from $1 million to $400,000. So she's now out of custody. That is not a possibility in Illinois unless they're successful on the appeal. They have to be successful on the appeal, which I do not think that they will be. And he's going to just sit there for no reason. He's going to be in custody for a longer time than I think he needs to be, which is my problem with it. Do you think this is just a smear campaign to support AR-15 ban? That comes from Justin Goldsmith. I think that yeah. I don't think that this case itself is a smear, but I certainly think that any time that an assault rifle or a quote assault rifle is used in anything, that the media really likes to dogpile on it. Anytime they can vilify somebody with a firearm, they love to do that. There's a lot of people in this world who don't like firearms. They don't believe in the Second Amendment, and this is their flag. This is their issue that they want to sink their teeth into, because this is where they can make arguments against that. So certainly I think it's political. I also I disagree with it completely. We're going to see what happens, but it's not effective. We can't have these discussions in Illinois. We got to send them back over to Wisconsin so we can talk about it. Vince Otmori says, if the cases move back to Wisconsin, would you file a motion for a change of venue? I'm not sure that I would. Again, normally I would say probably, because of the sort of volatility of the whole case. But we also know that, Mike Gravely and the judges in Kenosha were at least accommodating in Kizer's case, in Chrystul Kizer's case. So you have a little bit of a favorable forum there, as far as I can tell. Gigi says, at R&R, NBC backed Biden. Google, NBC, how a fake persona laid the groundwork for a Hunter Biden conspiracy deluge. Also glad to see the show being blown up. You deserve it. Thanks, Gigi. Gigi's been here for a long time, and he's, I think, one of the originals. Thanks for being here. We got Lorenzo Greasy Bottoms, who's saying, when Kyle's case eventually moves, how likely do you think it'll be for Kyle to walk free after seeing how his lawyers acted in court today? So I have almost no confidence in his attorneys at this point in time. For a long period of time, I was hedging on them. I was waiting to see how they handled themselves in court. Both of these guys are a lot older than I am. Both of these guys have been around a lot longer than I have. But and I'm not the definitive guide on criminal law, but I do practice criminal law, and I don't practice in these other spaces where these guys practice. We only do criminal law. We're good at it. And these guys, from what I have been reading from them, or what I see on their websites even, they don't even touch criminal law. And I was thinking, okay, well, maybe they're brilliant and they're going to learn this stuff, or they're going to bring in experts, or they're going to get up to speed quickly and make good arguments. But we just haven't seen that at this point in time. And the final straw for me was when John Pierce comes out and he says, we're going to appeal this verdict that they got today. I think it's a huge waste of time. I think it's a huge waste of money. Kyle's going to be sitting in custody. It's going to go up on appeal. It's going to come back down. He's going to get extradited anyways. And they're going to have wasted a ton of time and a ton of money for nothing, in my opinion. And he's going to be sitting there just rotting away this whole time because his lawyers are incompetent. Okay, we got Rolling on the Floor Chopper. Says, isn't the point of the extradition hearing to protect the defendants from political malicious prosecution? Not saying that's the best strategy. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the factors that they consider. If if you're going to be extradited on a purely political prosecution, then yeah, the government's going to want to protect your citizens. Remember, this is one of those things where the states want to protect their people. Illinois wants to protect its citizens. Wisconsin wants to protect their citizens, just like the United States would protect you against, the Chinese wanting to extradite you to China. The U.S. would say, no, that's our citizen. You don't get to go to China. We understand you want him, Mr. China, but you don't get him. And that's the same thing that's going on here. And so Illinois, if it was a situation where it was a purely political prosecution or there was something that tipped the scales against extradition, then the judge would find that way. But there just isn't anything here. Extradition on itself is hard, and it's not something that is won easily. And I think they're wasting their time with this argument. So yes, it is a political prosecution, but it's also a legitimate prosecution. It is legitimate. People are dead. He can be charged with the crime. He does need to invoke the self-defense defense. And the only way he can do that is back in Wisconsin. He cannot do that in Illinois. We got Mr. Zulu in the house. Zulu is another original. Zulu's here all the time. He says, do all 3 shootings have to be defended as self-defense individually, or can they just use an overarching panic claim? So great question. I didn't see anything about, panic or, being startled or anything in the self-defense rules in Wisconsin. So, that is not itself a particular defense. Affirmative defenses like self-defense are limited to sort of a clearly defined. It's not. I shouldn't say that. It's not a clearly defined list. It's sort of this just abstract concept. There are these different affirmative defenses that case law and different statutes have recognized throughout the United States, throughout our judicial history, and Kyle's self-defense claim, I think if you can extend the umbrella to cover the entire timeline of events, if you can say that the self-defense became presumptive when he was running away, when he fired, my understanding is he fired a warning shot, he was being chased, somebody else was firing him, Rosenbaum was chasing him around the car, he shot Rosenbaum. From that moment, I think self-defense was applicable for that event. Now, remember, when we did our analysis, there were 2 different videos that were going on. We saw the first one where they were in the parking lot of that auto shop, and then we saw the second one where Kyle is sort of running down the street. And originally, the thought was maybe those are 2 separate instances. Maybe there was one shooting, and then 2 minutes later, he has separated and disengaged from that first incident and moved on into the second incident. Well, when we pieced it all together, it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like one continuous motion. He was running around, he came back and he saw Rosenbaum laying on the ground. He called somebody, and at that point in time, people are shouting, he shot somebody, he shot that guy. And the timeline never broke up. So I would think that the self-defense claim would carry over. That umbrella would cover the entire situation, and it wouldn't ever break up. So I think that self-defense claim will cover the entirety of the entire timeline. We have somebody named Dirty B who says, here's $2 just because good content and mod. Thank you. Okay, so just because good content and mod. So yeah, Faith is awesome. Miss Faith is back there, right back there, doing an awesome job. She helps me keep the train on the tracks over here. We got Connie Coleman with another $1.99. Thank you very much, Connie. Thank you, Dirty, and thank you, Eddie. Eddie comes back in. He says, Eddie Oliver with a super chat also. Thank you, Eddie Oliver. He says, when was the last time state-to-state successful block of an extradition that you know of? I don't know of them. Yeah, I can't name one because it's not common. People get extradited all the time. Happens all the time. I'm sure there's situations where that does happen, but typically they're one-off situations. This is a national case. This is a good case of self-defense. This is one that is very interesting because of the political context, because it happened on the streets, because it involves a 17-year-old kid, because it involves, a lot of the charged political issues that happen around the country that have been happening all year long. But in and of itself, it's not particularly a new novel type of case. It's not groundbreaking. People shoot and kill people all the time. And they flee across state lines and they get extradited. Happens all the time. They commit crimes. They go across the state. The state picks them up on a felony warrant and they get sent back to that state. Happens all the time, thousands of times a day. And so this involves something that's very charged. Yeah. And I think it's a great case of self-defense. And I'm very interested in it because I want to make sure that the self-defense claim is successful and that it's being handled appropriately, and that Kyle Rittenhouse, as an innocent defendant, is being represented by competent lawyers and given a fair shake by the judicial system. And that's why I'm interested in it. I think it's important for self-defense rules. I think it's important for firearm ownership and important for a lot of our freedoms, which is why it's so heated. But it's not new and interesting. It's not new and novel. John Pierce is not going to take this up on the Court of Appeals and suddenly like break the mold on extradition laws. The appeals court's going to go, wait a minute, why are you appealing this? Oh, because you said a document was not signed correctly? Okay. Denied. Thanks for playing. And Kyle's going to get extradited anyways. So, it just seems to me like just a waste of time. And I think Kyle ultimately is the one that suffers. Meanwhile, these attorneys get back on Twitter and start firing off tweets. All right. GG says, at RR, could Kyle himself appeal on the basis that his lawyers are corrupt and that they are leeching from him and his problems? Yeah, so Kyle can't appeal on that basis. Kyle could easily file a bar complaint against these guys and say they've embezzled money, or if there was a legitimate claim, he could make that claim. Now, I don't have any evidence of that. I know there was a lot of concern about that. Linwood and John Pierce were all creating these foundations, and people were having concerns that they were involved in reallocating resources. And so John Pierce resigned from the board. Who knows, what that looks like or what's actually going on there behind the scenes. But if Kyle has a legitimate complaint against them, he could file a bar complaint. He could just hire another lawyer. He could just go find somebody and say, nope, you guys are fired. You're gone. And bring somebody else in who would, employ a different strategy. Maybe they've spoken to him. Maybe he's on board with this strategy. Maybe they're thinking about something that I am not thinking about. I could be totally wrong on this thing. Maybe they'll be successful. Maybe they know something I don't, but I don't think so. I think that we're going to look at this on November 6th, and we're going to look at it further down the line, maybe months. It's maybe 3-4 months down the line, depending on how long this appeal takes. And Kyle's just going to be sitting in custody the entire time, which is why it's so frustrating. So, a bar complaint against a lawyer will maybe with merit, maybe without merit, but Kyle could certainly appeal. He could say, he had an ineffective assistance of counsel. He could make those types of claims, but they're not going to set Kyle free, in other words. All right, Greg in Houston says, I don't do super chats because I think YouTube takes too much money. Is there any other channel I could send you financial support? It's a great question, Greg. So, I am a part of a nonprofit organization called ericshouse.org. It is to help people who've lost somebody to suicide, overdose through substance abuse, or through tragic death. So, a lot of the people in that program have lost somebody to, lost their 14-year-old in a car accident or in an ATV accident or something like that. So I'm a big part of that. It's at ericshouse.org. If you want to make a donation to them, I see them when they come through. I'm on the board of directors over there. They do amazing work. It all goes back into services. So if you wanted to support some of that, that would be awesome. Thank you so much for even the offer. Thank you so much for the question. Greg in Houston too. I appreciate that. Joshua Kaufman says, what happened to the person that fired the first shot? Wasn't he charged? It was never trending in the news. Why is that? Do you think Kyle... Okay, so that's from Joshua Kaufman. Yeah, Joshua, I saw that headline. I saw that in the article. I don't know. I don't have more information on it at this time. I'm not sure. I think he was charged, but I just don't know. So we have Rolling on the Floor, Chapter 11 says, do you think Kyle would be facing these charges if he wasn't a police apologist or if he was with BLM or Antifa? It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think if this situation were maybe reversed, well, you can't really say that, right? Because Matthew Doloff is sort of the reverse of it. Matthew Doloff is in a different jurisdiction. He's over in Colorado, Denver, and he was on behalf of Antifa. He was, or more closely aligned with Antifa, let's say. At least that's the speculation. We covered it on this channel. He had some posts, criticizing Donald Trump, and he was at different, I think, Antifa or some sort of rallies. I think Occupy Denver rallies, which is, sort of the same contingency of that political spectrum. And he's being charged. He shot Lee Keltner, killed him. He's being charged. And I think he's getting prosecuted pretty aggressively. We covered that yesterday. The judge said specifically that they're not going to let him out. We're not going to modify his bond. You shot and killed somebody, and there's no good reason to let you out either. So to me, look, again, it's two different jurisdictions, two different courts, two different people, two different situations entirely, but neither one of them is sort of getting off easily. They're both being charged with murder, and they're both going through the process. So, things might be different if it wasn't so politically charged right now, but to me, it seems like they're both getting a fair shake. So Zorro says, who is in control of the money? I sent them $50. Who's in control of the money over at Eric's house? That is my mom, actually. My mom is the one who runs Eric's house. So she's incredible, the most amazing person I've ever known in the whole world. I love her to death. So the reason Eric's house was born is... Oh, okay. So nobody wanted to answer. So apparently that was the wrong question. So Eric's house, I lost my younger brother to suicide in 2016, and my family and we didn't know what to do after that happened. It was very devastating for us, and we didn't feel like there were a lot of resources out there available for families who've lost somebody. My brother had a long history with substance abuse, and eventually it became too much for him. So while he was alive, there was a lot of resources there to help him. But when he passed, the family and I were, we didn't know what to do. There were no more resources for us. So we decided to start, to create Eric's House to help other families who've also lost somebody figure out what to do. And there's a triage team where as soon as somebody has a loss in their life, we have just this amazing group of people who go and they show up and they support them and help them, literally with some of the difficulties, like moving the body and where to sleep that night and all that type of stuff. So they help with that, and then afterwards there's counseling. They have aromatherapy. They do psychic readings. They do all sorts of really great stuff. And there's a community for people who have who've lost somebody. There's a men's group, a women's group, and all sorts of services that go on over at Eric's house. And so there's amazing people there. I am sort of the tech person on the board. I help with a lot of the technical stuff because I'm sort of the only one who is any good at any of that stuff. So that's my role in it. And I participate in the men's group and other things like that, but it's an amazing community. I don't see any money. It all goes back into services. It's really good stuff. Okay, so Zorro was saying, who's in control of the money? So there were like three things. There were three ways that I could have answered that question. One was about Eric's house, which I just spent 2 minutes on, which apparently is not the actual question. The other one was where the super chats go. Those just go into our YouTube account. Apparently it sits there, and I got to figure out what to do with it. I'm probably going to invest in more gear and just kind of upgrade the studio a little bit. And I appreciate you for sending that stuff over. And the final question about Rittenhouse, and I think that's really the question, is who's in control of Kyle's money? And I don't know. That's the problem. That's the big issue. We don't know where that's going. It's sitting in these guys' bank accounts somewhere, and there's basically no oversight over it as far as I know. So they can be doing whatever they want with this money. And that's what's concerning. So, to me, that's another relevant part of this whole thing is how much of this money is being utilized for Kyle's defense. And if it's being utilized, is it being utilized effectively? Are they using it appropriately in terms of actually, is an appeal? In other words, is an appeal a smart use of that money? I do not think it is at all. Not even a little bit. I think it's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. It's not serving Kyle. And I don't know what anybody can do about it. It's a bummer, but we will see what else happens. So Zorro says, yes, that was the question finally. So it took me about 10 minutes to answer that question. Sorry about that, Zorro. But yeah, that is a problem, right? If the money is not being appropriated correctly, that is a big issue. So, what other questions do we have here? Oh my goodness, we have a lot of people on this live stream. This is a record for our live stream. I just saw the number. Wow. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for being here. As a reminder, if you're just joining us here today, just now, and you're not a regular subscriber, hit the subscribe button because we don't want you to disappear. We want you to be back here in the future. So let's take a look at a couple more questions and then we'll hop on off and get moving on our weekend. Okay, let's see. Who is in control of this country from Time? We're going to find out who that's going to be next week on Tuesday. It's going to be pretty interesting. John Loves the Lord says, news media says Kyle is in Wisconsin custody in Kenosha. Very interesting. Okay, so he's already been transferred. Is that right? He's already been transferred. All right, Sean James says you're growing a great channel. Thanks, John. Sean, I appreciate that. We're excited about it. We're having a lot of fun with this show. Faith and I are having a great time. We're having a, we're just, I think they're important, valuable conversations, and I'm just thrilled. I'm excited that people want to be involved in sort of breaking these things down, because it can be very confusing, and there's a lot of misinformation in the media. And once you are able to look at the court records and break this down on a line item by line item basis, it's a little bit more revealing, and we can talk about some of the problems. My only concern here is that justice is being done, that freedom is being considered, and that we're giving everybody a fair shake, equal justice across the board. And when I don't see that happening, I get mad about it. All right. Let's see. We got Greg in Houston, who just donated $50 to Eric's house in lieu of the super chat. Thank you, Greg. That's awesome. It's going to go to good people. They're seriously the best people in the world. The board of directors is it's a group of like nine women, I think, and me and one other gentleman. And it's just a lot of fun because they are just full of energy. They love to help people. That will be put to good use. Thanks for sending that over. Let's see. We got a lot of Biden's in the house. We got Phil Cruz, who's supporting Biden. Looking, okay. Looking like it's a little spammy there, Miss Faith. All right. If you had a business and you were a black man, Kyle was trying to stop people from burning it down. That comes from the Stevening. The Biden scandal is not substantiated. That comes from Yuri Kendall. Well, Yuri, I would encourage you, if you don't think that, then just back up to the very beginning of this live stream, because there was a lot that we covered about the authentication of it, right? We talked about Tony Bobulinski, who's now being backed and supported by a Democrat named Khanna. We've got authentication from Robert Graham, who verified the DKIM security validation on the emails. We've got the Senate Judiciary, the Senate Homeland Security Committee Chair, Ron Johnson, also confirming it. There's more evidence that the FBI has an active investigation and that Tony Bobulinski is a material witness in this thing. I think there's enough there to say it's been substantiated, at least worth having a conversation about. And the reason why I'm so concerned about the whole situation is that a lot of the media is not talking about it. A lot of people in this country have never even heard of Tony Bobulinski. They've never even heard of Hunter Biden or his hard drives. They have no idea that this is going on because there's a media blackout. At GG. So GG says, hey, R&R, is there a way to contact Kyle and let him know of his lawyers doing something shady? Yeah, I mean, the only real way to do that is to send him a letter. Send him a letter and tell him. I'm gonna imagine that he was originally blown up with mail, and now that he's been transferred over to Wisconsin, if that's true, he may get a whole new slew of mail, but who knows if he's going to respond to those things. All right, we've got Geronimo says Bobulinski, emails, photos, voice recordings, videos, and why did the FBI sit on it for so long? Good question. Good question. I don't know, and I am disappointed that they have, obviously. We have David Bennett, who says Kyle wouldn't have defended himself. He would be dead. So how can anyone say it wasn't self-defense? It's a good question. I think it was self-defense. And I think now that he is over in Wisconsin, then it's going to be something that will actually be argued moving forward. Sean James says, even if for the sake of argument, we agree Kyle Rittenhouse shouldn't have been there, it doesn't mean he forfeits his right to self-defense. Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. I think it's a pretty clear case of self-defense. A lot of people say he shouldn't have been there. Maybe true. But when he was being chased and there were people throwing things at him and there were people literally jumping at him and swinging keyboards at his head or skateboards at his head, that was no good. You're allowed to defend yourself, and he did. Okay, we got Gigi. Isn't Trump the head of the FBI? Why wouldn't it be in their interest if this thing was investigated? Yeah, so Trump is the head of the executive branch, right? So he is he controls the executive. But a lot of these agencies are sort of their own almost autonomous little entities in and of themselves. So they're part of the executive branch, but Donald Trump doesn't have the authority to just go in there and say, I demand that you investigate the Bidens. Right? We wouldn't want that anyways. We wouldn't want a president to just sort of go in and dictate where these investigations should take place. We want them one step removed. Because remember, if Donald Trump did this, then the next time there's another president in there, they're going to follow the same precedent. So if one executive comes in and they want to modify the entire country to be like an arm of their political campaign, the FBI is going to investigate all my opponents, and the CIA is going to go investigate all those opponents, and I'm going to use the IRS to clamp down on certain entities like Obama did, right, with the Tea Party IRS scandal. Right? That is wrong. We do not want that to happen. We want independent, ethical, legal investigations taking place. But we want to know a little bit more about them. I would love to know why the FBI has been sitting on this thing since 2019. It's a public interest. It's of public interest. We need to know about this. And I would say that on the other side too. If Donald Trump Jr. had a laptop full of allegations and just horrendous things on that, I would want to know about that. I would want to cover it here, and it would really impact how I view the election, just like this impacts how I view the election. But the bigger issue here in my mind is not so much that Hunter Biden, likes to sleep with hookers. That's his own business. That's fine. The big issue here to me is the connection with Joe Biden, with this idea that while he was vice president, he was literally having meetings with people from Burisma, and then went back and had a conversation with the Ukrainian president saying, if you don't fire this guy, we're not going to give you $1 billion in foreign aid. That is corruption through and through. That is the bigger issue. The Hunter Biden sex tape, nobody cares about. The corruption from Joe Biden, that's a separate issue. And that's the one that needs to be talked about. Unfortunately, a side huge issue is this idea that the media is not covering it. There's a blackout across the board. There's not covering it. You can go to the Ground News website I showed you, and you'll see there's this blind spot for many people in the country where there's a substantiated, credible allegation that Joe Biden was in a corrupt relationship with some people from Burisma, and they're just not talking about it. It's wild that this is happening in America, but it is. All right, let's see what else we have. We got, let's see here. Any other questions? Kevin Wines says Kyle was a hero. Pappy23G says, so where is the evidence? There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of evidence about the Biden stuff all over the place. We just went through an email and we verified that the DKIM was certified by Google's own servers. It was verified by an independent third party by the name of Robert Graham. It was confirmed by the Senate chairman of the Homeland Security Commission. There's a lot of evidence. Okay, we got Dirty Wop says, I'm sorry for all these fools, Faith. It illustrates how awesome of a mod you are. Yeah, she's going hard in there. This sounds like a conspiracy channel. That comes from Yuri Kendall. Well, Yuri, I appreciate that. I mean, I understand that. I've gotten that allegation from other people. There's a local attorney here who said I sound like Fox News and a conspiracy channel. Well, that's fine. You can think that. All I'm doing literally is looking at the evidence. That's it. It's just the evidence. If the evidence was bad, then it's bad evidence. But it doesn't seem to be so bad. It seems to be pretty dang good. And that's all we're reflecting on. So if you think that, an authenticated email is a conspiracy, that's fine. But I trust the email. I trust Google and their servers to show me that that's authentic. And we've got multiple people confirming it. So we're just going to keep talking about it, especially if nobody else will. Okay, we've got somebody says conspiracy theory is when there is no evidence. Conspiracy fact is when there's proof there was a conspiracy to do something. Angela Crimmins says Biden is completely compromised and should not be able to run for office. Salt and Papper says, I've given up on U.S. media. Sky News Australia tells both sides with no BS. Yeah, there's a lot of other people who are talking about it, but the mainstream media here is just not. Kyle didn't point his weapon until his life was in danger. That is not menacing. We have the director of FBI answers to William Barr, and he answers to the president. That comes from BNS. Literally, we have Comey, Strzok, Page, Rosenstein equals a conspiracy injustice against Trump. Yeah, and John loves the Lord. Yeah, there's pretty good evidence to that to support that claim. Right? We saw the Strzok and Page emails right after Trump got elected, or was before in the run-up to the election, he was saying, we're going to stop him. You have 2 FBI agents saying that they're going to stop the next incoming president. Is that a conspiracy? Feels like a conspiracy to me. If Kamala had any integrity, she would step back and run next cycle. That comes from Edward Petrick. We have, thank you for speaking the truth. That comes from Calvin Robinson. Thanks, Calvin. Appreciate that. Yuri Kendall says, very silent on Trump's crime. What crimes are you talking about, Yuri? Which ones? Are you talking about his tax returns? Kyle is a national treasure from Larry G. Apparently, media analysis is being a conspiracy theorist. Laughing my LMAO. We have Shoshana says CIA coined the phrase conspiracy theory to discredit people onto them. Yeah, it's like we're just talking about the evidence. It's not my hard drive. I didn't generate this hard drive. I didn't drop it off. I didn't do any of that stuff. For the beginning of it, I on this channel, I said, okay, this is why it's credible. This is why it's not credible. And every day it's looking more and more credible. So I can't just deny that. I can't just say, well, I'm a Biden supporter, therefore I'm not going to look at this stuff. How can people do that? I don't know. All right. We have Al Milligan says maybe Fox tells the truth more than the like. And of course, those who seek the truth might look like Fox. Okay. We're seeing the benefit of growing. You guys might need a few more mods in the near future. We got Ma the Fox who just chimed that in with that. We have Jesse James says, please get mods. You will have a better channel. So Faith is back there working hard. We have never had this many people on this channel. Never, not even close. I wouldn't even have imagined that there'd be 2,600 people right now watching this. Pretty wild. We are going to try to level things up a little bit. We're talking about a Discord server. We're talking about, giving people access to our show prep tool. We use a tool that we organize all of our stuff in and all of our PowerPoints. And so we kind of wanted to curate a people who would be interested in that stuff. And then maybe we can recruit some other moderators for the show, because we do the show every day. And, if we're going to start seeing more and more numbers, then we may need more moderators and we may need to level things up a little bit. Now, traditionally, the show usually has, maybe 500 people on the low end. Today, it's like five times that. So Miss Faith is scrambling hard back there, doing her best. Truth is not ideologically dependent. That comes from Zulu with some good wisdom there. I completely agree with that. I try to be ideologically unbiased as much as I can. Of course, I have biases. Of course, I have political opinions on this stuff. But on this show, the rule is evidence. Let's look at the evidence, not the rumors. Remember, I didn't cover the Hunter Biden stuff for a long time. I was late to the game on that story intentionally. I did it for a reason. Because it was just rumor. It was just speculation. It was a lot of talk flying all over the place. Hunter Biden, Burisma, emails, all this stuff. We had no information about it other than just some rumors. And then we saw some documents come out. We saw the subpoena from the FBI, from a district court. They wanted a copy of the hard drive. Why would they want a copy of the hard drive if it's just a bunch of fake Russian disinformation? Why would they go through the formal process of requesting a subpoena, identifying the hard drives, and getting a copy of it? Why? So at that moment, we knew that there was a court filing, there was a record of this thing, and the FBI wanted it. It wasn't just a random third-party security company. This was a legitimate government entity. At that point in time, we thought, okay, now there's something here. Now there is actual evidence that we can talk about, and we just analyzed the evidence. And for a long time, I talked about some of the problems with it. We talked about the chain of custody problems. We talked about a lot of the speculation about where these people came from. I explained clearly that a lot of these people are biased. Rudy Giuliani, of course he's biased. Of course he's biased. The Mac shop owner, of course he's biased. But does that invalidate the information that's on the hard drive? No, it doesn't. Just because the messenger is bad doesn't mean the message is bad. It could be bad. You could say that the messenger altered the message, but when we have independent verification outside of the messenger, outside of Rudy Giuliani, outside of the Mac store guy, we have multiple people who are on email chains, multiple people who are third-party investigators, multiple news sources now. The FBI itself is confirmed that they've got a possession of a lot of this stuff. It's corroborated. So the messenger is irrelevant anymore. It's substantiated, and I think it's perfectly relevant, perfectly good evidence. And we even applied the federal rules of evidence to this stuff. We talked about relevancy, we talked about personal knowledge and other things. So Biden's laptop matters, according to David Torres. Firestarter says, what did they charge Kyle with? They charged him with a lot of different things. They charged him with, let me pull it up. He's got 2 counts of reckless homicide, 1 count intentional homicide, 1 count recklessly endangering safety, attempted homicide, possession of a dangerous weapon, amongst other things. But those are the big ones. All right. We have Vicky Dillon, who says, I don't think Trump has any pending cases. You know, he may have a case. I think the Southern District of New York is trying to dive into him. To me, that seems like an entirely political prosecution. And you know, listen, like who leaked his tax returns? Remember this? Somebody leaked his tax returns, and they were combing through them, and they wanted to. Early in the Hunter Biden leaks, they were trying to reframe this to say, well, what about Donald Trump's bank account in China? Remember Pete Buttigieg? We played him here in a previous show. Pete Buttigieg comes out and says, well, what about Trump's bank account in China? I don't want to talk about Joe Biden's 50,000 emails that are incriminating. I want to talk about Trump's Trump's bank account in China. If Trump gets indicted, if there's a formal document that charges him with a crime and we have some evidence to review, I'll review it on this channel. Taxes and speculation about taxes and not paying enough taxes is boring. It's so boring, it's not even interesting. And I don't like paying taxes either, quite frankly. I don't think I think the idea that you want to pay the least amount of taxes is something that every single business owner and every single American who's being honest with themselves agrees with. Nobody wants to pay high taxes. So for the media to come out and say Donald Trump only paid $750,000 or $750 in taxes is like, good for him. He was moving his money around well. He was reinvesting it back into his projects. Maybe he was making anticipated tax payments. There's a million reasons why, but it's pretty boring. But it's not a crime as far as I can tell. If he's charged with a crime, we'll review it. Somebody, Silver Sharky says taxation is theft, and I agree with that. I can't stand taxes. I am so opposed to taxes in every way. And I've talked about that a lot on this channel. Can't stand them. I think it's taxation is basically taking part of your life away. If you wake up and you use your skill set, your God-given talents and your creativity and your abilities, and you mix that life force with the world and you create something of value. So you take yourself and you go and you work and you build a beautiful chair, you create this woodwork desk, or you go and you represent somebody in court, or you go and you make somebody a hamburger, whatever it is. You're mixing your life with your labor and with some other property, and you're creating something of value in the world. What the government comes and does and says, yeah, I want 30% of that. I want 40% of that. If Joe Biden wins, I want 67% of that. That's taking your life away. In my mind, that's how I view it. It's that big of a deal. So if the government is going to take something away from me, it better be for a damn good reason. A damn good reason. Not because they want to go investigate, some owls in some forest somewhere, which really isn't about the owls. It's about paying off some lobbyist or some politician somewhere in order to secure their reelection campaigns. And I do not want to pay for that stuff. Tired of it. We pay taxes on everything. Everywhere you turn, you pay taxes. Every time you fill your car up, gas tax. Every time you stay at a hotel, hotel tax. Get on a plane, 1 million taxes. Pay your water bill, 1 million taxes. Income tax, sales tax, everything. It's nonstop. I'm sick of it. All right. We got Ban Ghost. Kyle didn't do anything wrong. We have Merck Co. says, what about social media censorship in order to influence the 2020 election? Yeah, we covered that this week too. We talked a lot about Section 230. We did an analysis on the Section 230. We talked about Jack Dorsey, who was from Twitter, who was in front of the Congress this week. We talked about Justice Thomas's opinion urging the revisiting of Section 230. We talked a lot about that, and I am hopeful that there will be some modifications as this issue continues to develop, that we'll see some modifications with the liability for these big tech companies. All right, we have Yuri Kendall says, your stances on Biden's tax is misrepresentation. You have to be very rich to get tax increase. Well, Yuri, here's the problem with that, okay? I am not a very rich person. I would not consider myself to be very rich, but I do have a business that employs a lot of people. And the firm does well. We have 21 employees here. We make, a good amount of money in order to support those people and in order to help our clients. And what the way the IRS structures these things is that if you're a business owner, even though I don't, the firm makes money, I don't make all of that money. On the line item for the firm's total income revenue, it's a big number. But the subtraction is also a big number. We have a lot of expenses. We have a lot of people to pay, and a lot of things that we do to keep this train on the track so that we can help people with their cases. The problem is, even though I'm not pocketing that money, that income, that top line income, if you're a small business, you're an LLC, you're taxed as an S corporation, it flows through. So you may not be making that much money. In other words, I'm not taking all of that money and putting it in my bank account, but because it's coming in through the firm, I'm going to get taxed as though that is my personal income. I have to deal with this all the time. So I'm not somebody in that upper tier tax bracket that Joe Biden's tax plan would ultimately be focused on. But I am a small business owner and I make a lot less than that tier. And so what that means is that I'm going to get the same penalties. They're going to trickle down into my business and it's going to take more away from me. It means I can't hire as many people. It means I can't do any more marketing so I can grow this firm, so I can help more people. I think we have the best firm in the state of Arizona. I want more people to know about us. I want more people who have been charged with crimes to be able to get the best representation that they can, because there are a lot of bad lawyers out there, the likes of some of the stuff we're seeing in Kyle's case. There's a lot of them and people don't know any better. So if I have more resources to go and grow my company and enact my vision and focus on building this firm according to good legal principles so that we can help more people, but the government comes in and they rip us off and they take off a huge portion of our of revenue that should be for our growth, they take it away for their purposes, it hurts our business. It hurts me, it hurts our employees, it hurts our clients, and it hurts our society. So, this distinction that, it's only if you make over $400,000 or $450,000, that's insane. If any business that is an LLC that's taxed as an S corp makes more than that, then those individual partners or those members of that LLC are going to see some serious tax repercussions. And there are many of us who are underneath that top tier. Maybe I'm misunderstanding Joe Biden's tax structure, but I don't think I am, and neither do my financial advisors or the other people who help us run the firm. Everybody's concerned about it, as they rightfully should be. Okay, so we have my boy says, did Trump not break U.S. law by withholding a White House meeting desperately sought by the Ukrainian president and critical U.S. military assistance to fight Russian aggression on East Ukraine? Did Trump not break U.S. law? No, I don't know. I don't know what law he would have broken. I mean, I think a president has the ability to meet with foreign leaders. So I don't know what law that is. If Biden won and was charged on November 4th, who would be sworn in on January 20th? It's probably going to be Kamala Harris if that happens. Shoshana Rose says if Biden manages to steal this election, we're doomed. Okay, you tax more to businesses making over $400,000. Businesses move to other countries, most likely China. Do you see the circle? Yeah. Jay He says 5150. Yeah, taxes wreck businesses. Taxes wreck everything. Nobody messing with Kyle. Linwood isn't messing around in this case. That comes from the Wingmakers. We've got James Greco says, I agree. They own the system. They created the chain for get out of jail free card. We have Shane Lee who says you can go to Dubai and set up your business and they won't tax you. Yeah, I'm concerned that people are going to leave this country if taxes go up too much, right? If taxes are up 60%, if 60% of your life, the work that you do that transfers your life into money, if 60% of that is taken away, that's just devastating. People will just move their businesses. That's Joe from Cali. Yeah, Joe from Cali, if you tax the wealthy at 60%, they will just move their businesses and the taxes will be left on the poor. Idiots. Yeah, right? A lot of people are leaving California, Joe, right? We've got Rogan left, Ben Shapiro left, Elon's talking about leaving. Everybody's leaving because they're tired of it. It really, really hurts. I know it feels good to say we're only going to raise taxes on the rich. I know it feels good. I know it sounds good. It's not good because it encompasses a lot of people who are not rich, a lot of small business owners who just want to grow their company, hire more employees, help more people. Good, wholesome people are going to get just crushed under the tax burden. It's a major problem. We've got some questions. So somebody said off subject. Jesse James says, what do you think about the straw man argument? So are you talking about a fallacy, the straw man argument fallacy? It's a good question. The straw man fallacy is one of those where you basically create a version of your opponents and you attack the arguments of that created opponent. So if I'm in a debate about somebody over abortion, let's say, and I've got one position and they have another position, what I would do is I would create a straw man, a fictional version of that person. I would create an argument for that person, and then I would start arguing with that fake person, that straw man argument. And then I would basically ascribe that over to the original person. And then they would call me out and say, that's a straw man. I never said that. That's not the real issue. We're not talking about that. It's kind of it's a poor way to argue. It's called a fallacy. Okay, we have Linda, who says Biden and Harris had stated on numerous occasions that they would roll back Trump tax breaks. Whether that includes middle-class tax breaks or not, who knows? Okay, we have Gigi. I think the person was talking about the thing Trump was impeached over when talking about the crime he was being charged with. So I must have missed that in the chat. I apologize. Silver Sharky says, I want to leave California because we're treating the fires like Minnesotans treat snow. Scott Warren says, if you tax the rich too much, then they leave. And then they have to tax the lower incomes that can't make up the loss. Yeah, that's right. It trickles down for sure. The income tax was supposed to be for only millionaires at a 3% clip, which changed in less than 4 years so Wilson could send us to war. Yeah, it's always creeping taxes. Can't stand it. John Loves the Lord says, does Kyle have defamation case for being branded a white supremacist in the media? I think he does, actually. Yeah, I think he does. I'll tell you this. I'm not a defamation lawyer. I'm not a civil attorney. I do criminal law, and I've got a political science background, and I talk about those things, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But what I remember from law school is that with a defamation case, if you can show, there's two distinctions. If you're a public figure, then you have to show that the statement was false and it was made with what's called malicious intent, I think is the phrase, with malice, with actual malice. So they have to, the statement against the person has to be sort of with bad intention. They had to intend to go and hurt you because you're a public figure. I think that's how it works. Or it's the other way. It's one of those two ways. But my point is, Kyle Rittenhouse is not a public figure, and they made a statement against him which was defamatory. So I don't think that I think the standard is much lower. So in other words, I think he could bring a claim against CNN and Joe Biden, right? Because they used him in an ad where Kyle Rittenhouse was being portrayed as a white supremacist. They showed a picture of him. And just previously, they said, Donald Trump is wrecking America with all these horrible things, and then white supremacists, Kyle Rittenhouse, right? And clearly, there's no evidence that he's a white supremacist. No evidence at all about that. I have not seen any evidence. If anybody has any evidence, send it to me. But I have not seen it. So I think it was a defamatory statement. I think it did hurt him. I think the damages are pretty significant. The other thing you have to prove in defamation and those types of claims are damages. What would Kyle get as a result, or how was he damaged? Well, if the Biden campaign is saying he's a white supremacist and they're spamming that all across the country on all these different channels and news sources, what if somebody on the jury that would be hearing Kyle's case heard that? That's a pretty big damage. You have a bunch of jurors sitting here thinking this 17-year-old kid is a murderer and a racist and a white supremacist and a Nazi. It's pretty big damages. We got Denise, who says, oh, I just lost that one. Denise says the reporters who took the videos that night in Kenosha are testifying for the defense. So why is Kyle still in jail? Sorry, maybe you've talked about it. I'm a new subscriber. Thanks, Denise. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate the new subscription. I'm so excited that so many people are here. I hope people are remembering to hit that subscribe button while we're going through some of this. Yeah, that issue I think is very pertinent. And I think that the reporter, what was his name? That reporter was really the only witness who was in the probable cause statement that we went through on this channel. And his language, what he was saying specifically, I thought was very, very in favor of Kyle. It looked like he was supporting Kyle almost entirely. And when we were reading through that probable cause statement, it looked like it was a clear case of self-defense. Now, the reason why he's still in custody is because Kyle needs to raise the self-defense. He can't do that if he's in Illinois. So now that he's back in Wisconsin, it sounds like this happened during the show. He got moved back over to Wisconsin. Then it sounds like that is going to be something where he's now, if John Pierce truly does appeal this extradition hearing and, he's brought back or whatever, then maybe he loses the opportunity to make that claim. But you have to raise the self-defense claim on your own. The prosecutor is not going to identify defenses for the defense. The prosecutor's job is to prosecute the crime. The defendant and his attorney have to bring the defenses. And self-defense, I think, is very pertinent and very, very applicable here. And so we'll just see what happens there. We'll see if the Pierce Lynn Wood team invoke that defense and how that plays out in Kenosha. All right, lots of comments coming in. We have, Valhalla says it was McGinnis. That's right. Yeah, it was McGinnis. Yeah, that's right. I'm only here because I was Googling the state of Kyle's extradition. I think I may drive to jail tomorrow and help somebody. Let's see. And interview the poor guy. That comes from Has a Monitor Tan. We have Straight Arrow 62 says COVID is now about the positive tests. We've got Coffee and Conversation says he likely won't be able to claim self-defense according to Wisconsin law with the gun charges. So I'm curious as to where that conclusion comes from. We went through the statutes in Wisconsin, and I know what you're saying. Okay, so I think you're saying that because he was in violation of a gun rule in Wisconsin, that suddenly invalidates his claim of self-defense because he was already in violation of the law. In other words, if you're already in the process of breaking the law, like if you're robbing a bank and you go in with guns and somebody shoots at you and you fire back and kill that person, well, you can't claim self-defense, right? You broke the law first. So you can't claim self-defense as a result of that. That's the argument that I think Coffee and Conversation is bringing up here, that Kyle was already in violation of Wisconsin law. Now, I've heard that argument. I have not looked at the Wisconsin law. I think it's largely sort of speculation at this point in time. I haven't seen any concrete evidence that there's case law or anything that supports a violation of that law really truly does invalidate the entire self-defense statute in Wisconsin. And if it did, I think there's even argument that that law is in conflict with the United States Constitution and the U.S. Code. And we have a supremacy clause in the United States that says that if a state law is in conflict with the federal law is supreme. It overrules the state law. That's just part of how we structure things. So if Wisconsin has a gun law that would otherwise invalidate Rittenhouse's self-defense claim, but that gun law is at odds with the federal law on guns and in violation of the U.S. Constitution, then it may be possible in this hypothetical that portion of the prosecutor's argument that self-defense shouldn't apply would be invalid. And therefore, it would continue on as a regular self-defense claim. It's a good question, and that's going to be one of those really messy, intricate arguments that takes place. Yeah, so 6'2" says 17-year-old can serve in the military. Another one says a 12-year-old can carry a firearm in Wisconsin. TL says Kyle being charged is the country bowing to mobs. We got Ma the Fox says, though, if I recall, an underage man in Wisconsin shot and killed a home invader and successfully pled to self-defense. Yeah, I heard the argument that Coffee and Conversations brought out, but I just haven't seen any evidence to support that either. We have Ma the Fox. No, we have Gigi says it's not really about Ben Shapiro. A lot more people than him are just leaving. Yeah, so Richie Vegas says, where did Ben go? I think he went to Nashville. And then Joe Rogan went to Austin. We got King Cringe, who says he was also jaywalking as he ran away. Right to life and self-defense suddenly denied. We have the Italian Stallion. It's a great name. Says, remember when Tucker Carlson sent a flash drive through the mail and lost it, only to recover it the very next day and then drop the whole thing? Makes you think it's because there was nothing there. Yeah, what happened with that story? I wonder what happened with that. Yeah, he kind of made a big deal about it, and then it seems like it went away a little bit. At R&R Law Group, a 17-year-old can carry a long gun, but not a 30-round clip. So Jesse James coming in with the clarification on the Wisconsin law. Thank you. I should take a look at that. We have Adam McLean says, is he getting a trial by jury? Who would find him guilty? Good question. Yeah, it'll definitely be a trial by jury. Biker Buds coming in with the election news says the election will not be close. Trump will win in a landslide. Why do you think Walmart is taking guns off the shelves? They know civil unrest after the election is coming. Okay. RDAB 700 says, if you were smoking pot and someone attacked you, you still have the right to self-defense even if pot is illegal. Zulu says, Joe Rogan went to the epicenter of sanity, which is growing in Texas. Kudos. Austin is big-time liberal. That comes from Blackie. We see here, I want to get a smallpox vaccine from Silver Sharky. Is that a thing these days? Is smallpox still around? We have Evan who says the Dems know they're about to lose in a landslide. All their dirty tricks haven't worked, and that's why they're freaking out and trying to change the rules 4 days before the election. Yeah, we spent a lot of time here talking about those different cases, how these different rules are playing out. And yesterday we spent time talking about North Carolina and Pennsylvania. I think in Pennsylvania, one of them, I think in North Carolina, it's 9 days after the election. They're still collecting ballots for 9 days. And then in Pennsylvania, it's 3 days. I might have that reversed. It might be Pennsylvania's 9 and North Carolina's 3. But yeah, we're going to have an election, and one of these states is still going to be counting ballots 9 days after the election takes place. Valhalla says, why wouldn't Kyle Rittenhouse be able to self-defense? It was clear that Rosenbaum did not know Kyle's age, and therefore the reason why he attacked Kyle was not because Kyle was breaking the law. I think Kyle can claim self-defense. I think it's a very good self-defense claim, and I know that he will make that claim, or he should make that claim if his attorneys are competent. Angela Crimmin says, I think that Trump has insurrection in place if civil unrest occurs. Certainly hope we don't see any of that stuff. I do not want to see any of that stuff. Zulu is telling us that smallpox was eradicated because science is good. Left of You says the law is not about being able to claim self-defense. If you are trespassing or robbing a bank, Kyle was legally working there. Yeah, he was in public property, and I think he was. I don't think he was breaking the law. Now I don't know about the gun law, like we said. Yuri Kendall says I lived in Austin for 5 years. It's not that liberal. King of Dice 66 says Kyle wanted to be a big man. He certainly got some and more. Joy says with almost 40,000 people infected, ages 20 to 29 in VA, only 8 have died for COVID. Wow, that is not that many. Eight's still a lot, but certainly not what many in the media would have you believe in terms of scope. We have Gigi says, what do you think the chances of the election going to the House are? I don't think it's going to go to the House. I don't. I think we'll know. We'll know. It'll go one way or the other. Trump has been inciting problems. We got all right. I live in Seattle. It's a bastion of fake liberals. That comes from Mike James. Bob LaSalle says, any thoughts of Kyle getting a pardon if for some crazy reason he gets convicted? Yeah, that's a good question. That would be a controversial one, isn't it? That would be. Depends who the president is. If it's Donald Trump, he may get a pardon on that one. If it is Joe Biden, don't think that's happening. Just speculation. I've got no statements from either of them to support that claim. We have coffee conversation. Where'd that one go? All right. Okay, here he is. Okay. From Coffee and Conversation. My understanding is that if the gun was illegal, all prosecution needs to show is that the presence of the gun aggravated the others. 2 out of 3 went for the gun. Will be interesting legal discussion. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting legal discussion. Absolutely. And I think that, it's going to be going on for a while, especially if they're going to be appealing. We have somebody who says Arizona, North Carolina, and Michigan will carry Biden. That comes from DTES Home 85. The other way says, is a civil war type situation possible? I don't think so. I really don't think so at all. I mean, I think, look, things are heated. They're always heated. They're heated every election, right? When Obama was running, everybody said that this was socialism and the end of America. Romney was going to put you all back in chains, according to Joe Biden. It's always a lot of hyperbole. The volume is like a level 12 right now. And I think it's even more so because Donald Trump is somebody that's how he is. He's very, hyperbolic. He's very, very aggressive and colorful with his language. And so when that happens, you're going to get a similar type of response on the other side. So everybody's just, really, really just maxed out at this point. But truly, is anybody going to go out there and start, wanting to break the country up over this election? I just can't imagine that. As heated as things are, this is America. We have heated debates. We, lay everything out there on the line. We have our arguments. We have our big day on elections, and then things settle back down, right? I mean, even Bush versus Gore. Do you remember that in 2000? How old was I? I was in high school. I was 15 years old. Yeah, I was 15 years old, Bush versus Gore. And the country thought it was going to rip itself apart. It was such a close election, and it was decided by the Supreme Court. Bush lost the popular vote, but won the presidency by a tiny, tiny fraction of a margin, and something that was decided by the Supreme Court. And we're here. Everything's all right. Al Gore made a movie. George Bush sent us to war, and that's it. Everything carried on. And I think the same thing is going to happen after this election as well. Not too concerned that there's going to be a country ripped apart. Okay, we got a super chat coming in hot from John Doe. Says, random question, being an Arizonan, how do you feel about Sheriff Joe Arpaio? So I think Joe Arpaio is like a wart on the face of Arizona, and it's not a good looking one either. It's pretty bad. Sheriff Joe has been around forever. I don't know why he will not ride off into the sunset and leave us all alone, but he's not somebody I am a fan of, in particular because I'm a criminal defense attorney. He treated people here in our jails horrendously. He was somebody who forced people to eat this food. Literally, I have a video on our channel about this. I clipped up, there's a YouTube clip of Joe Arpaio. He has this like burrito thing that was like recycled food that he would feed to inmates. So he would actually take this like burrito and like all this chopped up whatever, throw it in there, and then, serve it to people. And there was a reporter who brought him one and said, hey, why don't you try to eat this thing? And he cut it open and he ate it. He's like, oh my God, it's horrendous. It's disgusting. He was serving that to people. And there were a lot of people in Arizona who were like, yeah, go Sheriff Joe. Like, go, these criminals are terrible people. Like, feed them dog food and put them in pink underwear and, throw them in chain gangs on the side of the streets and all this stuff. And it was like a big show. And what many people forget is that these are people. These are human beings. They've been charged with a crime, but they're not bad people by and large, most of them. There is a small segment of, the criminal population that are really, really, really not good people. But most of these people deserve to be treated with humanity. And this is a big issue that I have with a lot of the conservatives in the world, where they say that, we need to be tough on crime and just throw away the key and really penalize and punish these people. The problem with that is that when these people get out of custody, they come out worse than they went in. And we as a society have to deal with that. We have to deal with all these broken people with a lot of problems who need to get reintegrated in, and they have nothing, and everything's been destroyed and everything's been taken from them. So now we are almost punishing ourselves by having to reintegrate these broken people back into our society. And Sheriff Joe was at the forefront of this thing. He was the vanguard of being a terrible person when it comes to dealing with other people. And I am not a fan of him, and I'm glad that he's not on the ballot this year. Okay, we got Cindy McCain's endorsement. She's DTS Home 85 says that will help Joe Biden. We have Bonnie Holman, who says Arizona is more red, but lots of Californians have moved here in the last few years. It's still more Republican at this point. So Bonnie looks like she is here in Arizona, as am I. And I will tell you, it feels to me like I'm seeing a lot more Trump enthusiasm than I am Biden. And it feels to me, I wonder if anybody else is experiencing this, but it's feeling like this stuff is sort of bubbling up a little bit. Like a lot of the Trump support is sort of now coming out. That's just how I feel. Okay. Well, listen, everybody, this has been a super long chat. I'm so grateful that we had so many people here today for this conversation. Very important stuff. This Hunter Biden stuff, it's critically important. This Kyle Rittenhouse stuff, it's also critically important for a different reason. We're talking about justice. We're talking about freedom. We're talking about a lot of the fundamental principles that are so important to us as Americans. And so that's why I'm so grateful that you're here, because it's exciting to me that people care about these issues as much as I do. And that's why I would love to ask you to just subscribe, make sure that you're here, because we're going to be doing a lot more of this. We do this live show every day at 4 p.m., which is 7 p.m. Eastern time. So it's 4 p.m. Arizona Pacific time. I think daylight savings is coming back on soon. Arizona doesn't change, so I need to figure out what I'm doing with that. Now, normally Arizona stays the same, but the rest of the country changes for some bizarre reason. I don't understand that, but you do you, different states, that's fine. We're just going to keep our clocks the same all year round. But if you want to change yours, that's fine. I think the show is going to probably stay at the same time, but I want you to be here for it, because we're going to continue this conversation on. We got a few short days until the election. On election night, we're going to have a mega stream. I talked to Miss Faith. We're going to start the show at the regular time, and we're just going to continue on. We're going to cover the election results, but in addition to that, we're also going to talk about a lot of the criminal justice reform issues that are on the ballots across the country. In Arizona, we have a marijuana ballot. We're going to see if we can have recreational marijuana here, which I'm a huge supporter of. Why are we putting people in prison for marijuana? Makes no sense to me. But there are a lot of those other ballot issues, propositions all throughout the country, and we're going to be following those, cash bail reform and all sorts of stuff. So we're going to be covering those. And then if there are any protests, if there's any malfeasance that we see going on, we've covered a lot of the legal cases that were going up to the Supreme Court, specifically about some of the election rules, which states are allowed to count ballots after the election. We've got a list of the battleground states that have all of that data on there and the Supreme Court cases. So we're just going to, as stuff is coming in on the fly, we're going to be doing a live chat. Now, another thing, I am going to post over this weekend in the community section here on this channel, a link to the Discord, because I'm trying to figure out how to work that thing. So is Faith. I have very little experience with Discord, but we're going to try to see if we can figure that out so that we can take some calls during election night, because it is going to be a long night and we're going to have a lot to talk about. And I think it may help break things up a little bit so that you don't hear me rambling on for 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 hours. And so we want to make sure you're here for that. So hit that subscribe button, because on Tuesday, that is all getting started. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Hope you have a great time doing whatever it is you're doing. If you're dressing up, good luck to you. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And maybe I'll throw something on, but we will see. So if you, as a sign off, if you know anybody in Arizona who needs help with a criminal case, send them our way. We have an awesome team of people here. We offer free case evaluations. Happy to help out because we do a good job and we love helping people. So I will leave you with that. I want to thank you one more time for being here and remind you just once more to hit the subscribe button, because we have a lot of people here. I'm guessing that they're coming from, that they're not subscribers. We want to make them subscribers. And if you can, share the show, because these videos, they oftentimes get age restricted because of the content, and then they don't show up in the algorithm. So enough out of me. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a very